just getting set up here, so let's wait for another moment or so, another minute or so, maybe 2 minutes, and then we can talk about the film Diamonds Are Forever. So just hold on tight for about 2 minutes. 2 minutes and counting. I hope everyone is well, by the way. As I get into the computer setup here, I just want to know, is the sound okay? Could someone let me know if the sound is okay? Oh, that's me on the computer. Great. Okay, wonderful. Oh, Rico is here. Hello. Graybo is here. Hello. Zyroth is here. Cooper Glover 72. Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Dinobuck Kiryu. Which Bond film has your favorite aesthetic? That's a very interesting question. So, let's see. Don't know which one, but maybe. Oh gosh, aesthetic. That's also very how to define aesthetic as well. So, we'll have to. It's an interesting question. I don't know. It depends because it's all different. Each film it's also defined by its time period and things of that nature. So I don't know. Maybe if I could be allowed to say a few, maybe film in terms of aesthetic. And if we think of aesthetic as a kind of maybe a visual aesthetic, like set design, type of photography used, color scheme, that sort of thing. Maybe something like I like Dr. No and From Russia with Love very much, and I like, oh gosh, On Her Majesty's Secret Service I like very much. The Living Daylights I like very much. View to a Kill I like very much in terms of visual aesthetic. And Tomorrow Never Dies also I like as a visual aesthetic. I like the use of colors and in particular reds and lights and things of that nature. So I like that very much. Good question. Thank you. Okay, so we will get started in. I know it's 6, but let's give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started on Diamonds Are Forever. So 1 minute and counting. All right. And Gray Bow is formerly Gray Rainbow. Okay, great. Thank you. So, oh, great. Balin the Hobbit. Hey, hello. How are you? Zyrothra also mentioned Tomorrow Never Dies. So great. Yeah, I like the look of that film. And so, yeah, good question, by the way. Thank you for asking that. Okay, so just a few more moments, and then we'll get started here with Diamonds Are Forever, a discussion of Diamonds Are Forever. So looking forward to this one. Okay. Excuse me, I just woken up, so I'm actually a little bit still, I admit I'm a little bit sleepy, but I should be okay. I had a sip of coffee just a moment ago, so maybe that should start kicking in about a few minutes, I hope. But and let's see. Then we get here. Erwin is here. Hello, my friend. And let's see here. Oh, Kevin is here. Kevin says, can't say this is my favorite Bond. Oh gosh, somebody great. Can't say this is my favorite Bond film, in part due to the comedic tone of it, but I have to say the score is stellar. Some great scenes like the Peter Frank's elevator fight. He sounds in pain. Yeah, that's a great point, and I'll try to address actually my own, how should I put it, evolution when it comes to this film. And I agree 100% about the fight scene that you're referring to, and also about the use of the music. And I'm hopefully we'll have time to talk about that because I have some things I'd like to say. But um, yeah, this is really great. Anyway, let's see. So Magic Al is here. Dustin Lewis is here. Rod is here. Hello. Rocco Reviews. And let's see. Oh, Kubrick Lover 1970. Perfect timing about the comment about your feelings about this film. So before I get to that, I'll get to your comment next. But let us talk about this film. Diamonds Are Forever. And so this is the older DVD that I have. I also have the Blu-ray of it, and but one of the newer Blu-ray sets. But this is the film Diamonds Are Forever, 1971. Guy Hamilton and Sean Connery are back, and that's a pretty big deal. And I'll try to address in very basic detail some of the reasons why that is. And it is a very interesting film in the canon of James Bond films, and I would say also that it's one well, it's interesting, and I'll talk more detail about my thoughts on it and how much I like it because I really like it. So and so we'll talk about that hopefully as the live stream progresses. And I also will rely on the live chat from you and your comments and your discussions with other people here as we go forward. So I'm looking forward to this. And hopefully, if you want to talk about Diamonds Are Forever, yeah, I can hear your comments as well about this very interesting film. Now, a few things, as always, before we get started, which is that I plan to talk about this film, Diamonds Are Forever, and hopefully you and I and everyone out there, we all can talk about this film, Diamonds Are Forever. But for anyone who has not seen the film, we will be talking about specifics here, plot. We have to. That's the nature of the discussion. So, in that sense, if you haven't seen the film yet, Diamonds Are Forever, then I suggest that you turn off this live stream and you can watch the film and then you can come back because this live stream is uploaded to YouTube as a video after the fact. So the that yeah so I encourage you to do that if you haven't seen the film yet. Also, the live chat is available, as I alluded to earlier, for anyone who is interested in joining a chat. Many people, many friends here have joined over the past live streams, and it's been a really fun time. And there's always a nice sense of camaraderie and discussion and question asking, which I always encourage. And people are always very respectful to each other, and even when there is disagreement, people always are okay with disagreement, and they nothing is taken personally. And as always, I rely on you, my dear friends, to maintain a sense of decorum and respect towards others. And because I know I've been so lucky that I've met so many people like you who have always shown me so much respect, and I'm very grateful for that. And I thank you very much for that as always. And I know that I can rely on all of you going forward to show the same level of respect to others here in the live chat. And so I will rely on you and thank you in advance for always helping me out there. I really appreciate that very much. I do, truly I do. So thank you very much in advance. And speaking of the discussion, also, as I say, this will be a discussion focusing in on the James Bond film, Diamonds Are Forever. However, if you have any questions for me about anything other than Diamonds Are Forever, for the most part, generally speaking, in principle, I will focus only on Diamonds Are Forever. There might be a few instances where I might need to make references to other films. For example, today I can imagine that I might have to refer a little bit to the film On Her Majesty's Secret Service. in very broad terms. So that's an example of where I might talk about another film. But in general, in principle, I will talk about Diamonds Are Forever for the main component of this live stream, which means that if you have any questions for me in the live chat about a film other than Diamonds Are Forever, thank you very much for expressing an interest in what it is I might have to say on a given topic. I really thank you so much for that, and I wish I could take the time now to answer the question. But for purposes today, I will focus on Diamonds Are Forever. And if you want to ask me the question again, please send me a question in a comment section to a video here when it's uploaded, or maybe on another video, and I'd be very happy to do my very best to try to address it. I don't claim to be able to know everything, so I don't claim to be able to answer every question that is directed towards me, but please feel free to do so in a separate video comment, and I'd be very happy to give my attention to it to the best of my ability. Also, this discussion, Diamonds Are Forever, is one that is based purely 100% from a fan perspective. I am a fan of this film, and but I will describe exactly my evolution on this film, because I haven't always been a fan of this film. There were times, especially when I was younger, when actually I didn't like this film at all. But so I will talk about this. But with that being said, I have seen this film many, 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 many times since I was young. And so I'm talking about this film from that perspective. I'm not an insider. I'm not associated with the production or anything of that nature. So I don't have any claim to know every single aspect and facet of this film. But there are a lot of people here who have a lot of great information. And so if I can't answer anything, there are people here who might be able to address your question, or maybe there might be ways or avenues that we can hopefully direct you towards maybe some documentaries or some books, reference materials about the making of this film, etc. So, but I will be talking about this from a fan perspective. So with that, I don't claim to know everything, but I will try to talk about it again from the point of view that I have had with this film, as I say, growing up over the course of a number of years. So that's it. I think that's as far as the preliminaries are concerned. So with that, shall we begin with a discussion of Diamonds Are Forever? And I think the a great place to start is Cooper Clever 1972's comment from in the live chat a little bit earlier, who said, I got to say, Daisuke, this film dates itself a little, even though I guess any film from any time period dates itself. And yeah, I think that is a good place for me to begin with this film, and and my own evolution on the film. So let me just start, I guess I say, with why I like it now and why I didn't like it back then when I was younger, and why I think also that it's perfectly okay to like this film and love this film, or it's perfectly okay to not like this film or perhaps even despise the film because of its pretty obviously shifting tone from the rest of from the series that came before it, arguably. So I think it's in that sense it's a film that has a lot of different takes to it, because it feels very radical, shift in tone from especially the film that came prior to it, which was On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So let's start with when I was young. So I came to this film, as I say, when I was very young. It was released before I was born, but I came to it, say, on broadcast TV showings or VHS rentals and that sort of thing around the time that I was discovering and falling in love with and watching and beginning to just get excited by the James Bond films that I was discovering around that times. So when when I was a young boy, and it really took off when I was living in the United Kingdom, as I say, when I was little, and you'd have these films playing on British network television. I think it was London Weekend Television, ITV or LWT, and it was that kind of a recurring, almost ritual, if you will, television ritual of James Bond on TV. So, and among those was, of course, Diamonds Are Forever. Now, Sean Connery uh, is is iconic, and I think the film, the James Bond films that he made in general are very iconic. And one of the reasons that they are iconic is because of Sean Connery. And he brings a certain level of danger and sexual charisma and aura and, to borrow Shane Rimmer's words, voltage. He has a lot of voltage in his presence. I mean, he is iconic. And so to have a film that is a James Bond film starring Sean Connery, and that's a big deal. That is a really big deal. So then when you come to a film like Diamonds Are Forever and you have this idea in your head, or when I have this idea in my head about, oh, this is going to be another Sean Connery James Bond film, like I've seen with Thunderball or From Russia with Love or something, then that expectations I think are understandably built up inside one, especially when one is watching this for the first time. Combine that, of course, with if you look at the back and you look at the credits. Oh, this is Guy Hamilton. Wow, so this is the director of Goldfinger, one of the most popular and exciting James Bond films from the early Connery era. So you have a lot of expectation going in just by looking at the marquee or the credits, right, before even watching the film, and then you watch the film. And I think the reaction that I had was, oh, wait a minute, this feels very different, very, very different from the type of Bond films that I was used to. It feels much more, what's the phrase, tongue in cheek. It feels much more light and comic in tone. It feels very much like a film that is not necessarily, and I'm saying just in terms of an immediate initial response, it feels like a film that is not necessarily relying on the James Bond traits, the film traits that we are so used to. Uh, so the idea of the huge villain layer is a sort of different concept in this film, or the way that the plot is revealed is also a different concept, or it's a different way of the revelation of the plot here, or how Bond goes from situation to situation to situation. It has different feel to this. You combine that with a performance by Sean Connery that seems very relaxed. Some people might say almost too relaxed. It feels also that he might seem a little bit, how shall I put it? There might be a little bit more gray in the hair, um, and uh, and so there might be some physical difference to make a comparison to make between the James Bond, the Sean Connery depiction of James Bond as we see it in Diamonds Are Forever, versus, let's say, an earlier depiction by Sean Connery in a film like, say, From Russia with Love. So there might be some difference because of the passage of years, etc., which is understandable. I mean, we all age after all, and so this is, I think, a natural progression of human existence. It's one of the facts of life, right? But still, it is rather noticeable, and I think a number of people do make this point upon, say, making suggestions as to why this feels like a very different type of Bond film than from Bond films in the past. Um, but that's not to say that Sean Connery is in any way, let's say, less robust in his physicality. I would argue that he's very much into the role, and it's very physical, and he doesn't seem overly tired, or he's I think he's very much on top of his game in terms of the physicality of the performance. Just as someone mentioned, the Peter Franks fight in the elevator. I think that alone is evidence of his real raw strength and physicality. So there's nothing lacking in that department, I would suggest. But in terms of the look and the feel, and the phrase was used earlier, the visual aesthetic for then I think yeah, there's definitely a feel or a shift in tone when we see this film versus other earlier films that came before. So uh, what do we make, therefore, of all of this? As I say, when I was young, I wasn't I wasn't into it at all. I didn't like it at all, actually, and I thought it was odd, and uh, I thought it was it didn't make sense to me. I thought some of the things that happened were uh, I thought kind of over the top, too over the top for me, and some of the jumps that were made. For example, there were some real suspenseful set pieces that were set up, but then the payoffs were overly comic. And so that's how I felt when I was watching this film for the first time. However old I would have been, I don't know, I can't place the exact year, so it would have been what, 8, 9, 10, or something. And then growing up and then getting into my preteen years and then my early teenage years, felt pretty much the same in terms of whenever I saw this film. I would still rewatch the film because, right, when you watch James Bond films, you want to watch pretty much all of them. But this film, every time I would watch it, it would be, well, it's not really doing it for me. There were some great elements to it that I thought were absolutely stellar. I like the music, the John Barry score. It was mentioned in the chat earlier, and I'll try to address it later. I like the Shirley Bassey song "Diamonds Are Forever." I like how she just says, "Diamonds are forever, forever, forever." She just goes on forever, talking about forever, forever. I love that. Those little details. And there's one point in and I love there's although it took me a while to get into this early 1970s Las Vegas aesthetic. I think there are some aspects that I really got into from the very beginning. Like there's a moment in the title sequence where you have the diamond, someone holding the diamond, and then it's in the center of the frame, and you have the Morse Binder title sequence, and you have in the center of the diamond a silhouette of a girl dancing, and I love the hair of the what is it, the coiffure, the hair of the girl dancing. It's just it's enormous, it's epic hair. And so I love that. I like that little detail. I was always attracted to that little detail when that occurred. But and there are certain elements of the plot too that I liked. I liked the idea of the mysterious villain. Who is this mysterious villain, and what's going on? And it turns out to be Blofeld or Blofelds, right? And what's going on with this thing with the doubles, and suddenly Blofeld's in drag, and and what's going on here? And there's a Batho sub, and there's a Klaus Hergesheimer here, and it again, it didn't make sense to me at the time in whole, but these little details, I thought, oh, okay, this is interesting. I like this, but it was, well, okay, but still, it wasn't enough for me to really go over the top and really love this film, right? And also Winton Kid. I love Winton Kid. And I'll try to talk about them a little bit later. But still, it was a little bit, there was still some anticlimactic moments to it. The climax on the oil rigs always seemed to be, it needed some follow through from my viewpoint. There wasn't that huge clash between hero and villain at the end necessarily. It was hero and henchman, so to speak. So that was also an example of, and also even the plot. Whenever I think about how I felt about it then, It was I still had a difficulty. I think the biggest difficulty for me, well, there are two of them. First was exactly what was going on. When I, for the longest time, I really couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. Why were these people, what was going on with this diamond smuggling chain, and who is this person here, and why is this person being killed here, and what are the diamonds being used for? Again, it wasn't quite clear to me again when I was young growing up. Now it seems a little bit clearer to me, but back then it was, oh, I'm not sure what's going on. So that was one component that was a major tumbling a point for me. The other one was, as I say, the humor that seemed to be, at least from my point of view, usurping or taking over too much the reins of the tone of the film, if you want to put it that way. And so that was where I was at, though there were moments here and there that stood out for me in a positive way. As time went on, and I got a little bit older and a little bit older and a little bit older, I began to really get into this film a lot more. And as I say, slowly but surely. Oh, and also one other thing too, I forgot to say, one other thing too that really was very detrimental to my enjoyment of this film when I was young was the fact that it came immediately after one of my favorite films in the James Bond series, which is On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Now, you have a film that is so powerful and so exciting, like On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and also has in itself inherently a lot of buildup and a lot of expectation that would come in the next film, which is Diamonds Are Forever. And so you have this, all this baggage, if you will, of expectation and anticipation. And then, so in that sense, especially in the On Her Majesty's Secret Service type of sense, this film, Diamonds Are Forever, in comparison, might seem to be completely out of left field and completely unrelated, and thus, maybe in that sense, potentially anyway, a bit of a letdown. Okay, so that's where I was growing up. But slowly but surely, as the years passed, I began to identify aspects of the film that really appealed to me. And I began to appreciate the humor, and I began to appreciate the cleverness of the dialogue. We'll talk about the Tom Mankiewicz influence, and how this is, in essence, the first of the Mankiewicz line of films. Mankiewicz, Guy Hamilton. I mean, we'll see a lot of the Mankiewicz influence in we have in the following film, Live and Let Die Onwards. But here we have that wonderful, great one-line quip humor, very clever dialogue. I mean, it's real. It's super clever. And so that I began to understand some of those jokes a little bit more as I was growing up. I mean, when I'm a kid watching this film, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how. I mean, when I was like 8, 9, or something, 10, or something like that, and he says, oh hi, I'm Plenty. Oh, but of course you are. And then she says, Plenty O'Toole. And then Bond says, named after your father, perhaps. I was always, I don't know, maybe you got that joke when you were young immediately, but for the longest time I didn't quite get that joke, named after your father, perhaps. So, and Plenty O'Toole, when when I was like 8, 9 or something, it's like, what does that mean? I think I kind of know what that means, but I'm not quite sure. uh, and I always remember, I remember when I first heard that when I was a kid, I was like, well, Plenty O'Toole named after her father. Is that a joke to suggest that her father is like Peter O'Toole or something like that? Because at the time, I think I knew Peter O'Toole from the film, what was it, Supergirl? He was in the film Supergirl as the very memorable character of Zoltar, and Helen Slater and Saltar and the whole thing with the Phantom Zone and the Squirt, right? But so Peter O'Toole. So I thought, oh, is that a joke to referencing Peter O'Toole? I'm not sure, but I guess later on, as I got older, that was an example of something where I began to get it a little bit more. As soon as I got a little bit older and I began to get things, then I began to appreciate the cleverness of the dialogue. So that first that was a first step. That was the first big step. Um, one small step for man, right? One giant leap for mankind. I mean, there's a very famous moment where you have the moon exploration in this film, which I'll also try to get to later. One of my favorite moments in this film, by the way. But it was a small step, but it was actually a very big step, because from there, I began to want to reevaluate it. And I began to think, oh, I'm beginning to discover new things. And so I start to watch the film from that angle. And then I realize that it is so much fun. It is a lot of fun. And it's a lot of fun when you see all the details. It's campy, it's really quirky and odd. But then again, you sometimes, right, in our cinematic journey, we enjoy, I certainly do, I enjoy the campy fun romp films. And again, I, in my head when I was little, I didn't put those two things together, the campy romp entertainment and James Bond films. But when I started to be able to put those together and realize that in from one point of view, one could look at this film from that perspective, it becomes a lot of fun, so much fun. And then when I was able to have that realization in my mind, then I was off, and it became a great entertaining time for me. Still, of course, whenever this film comes up, and I mention it now, I get comments saying, not to me directly, but about the film. I don't like this film. I can't get it. It's too much for me in this direction. And believe me, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I was there. I was there, feeling the exact same way that you do. And so I completely get it. So you're not going to get that much pushback from me. And you don't have to like this film if you don't want to, because the James Bond films are so plentiful, right? And so if you don't like this film, you can go to another film, or other sets of films in this franchise that you can enjoy, because that's the great beauty of this series, after all, right? I think it is big enough. There's a big enough tent for a film in tone like Diamonds Are Forever. And if you don't like Diamonds Are Forever, that's fine, because you can always rely on, say, the earlier Sean Connery films that are, as I say, iconic and classic. And you can also rely on the films that came afterwards, and just have fun with those. And even within those subgroups, there are different types of entertaining James Bond films. There is the great over the top epic spectacle of a film like, say, Spy Who Loved Me, or there is the down to earth grittiness as of a film like, say, License to Kill, or something of that nature. And so there is plenty of room for all types of entertainment in James Bond, including this type, which is, I think, shown through very successfully in the form of Diamonds Are Forever. It's very different from its original source material, the Ian Fleming novel, as some of you may know. Very, very different. But the I think, as it stands on its own, it has a lot to offer. And that's the perspective that I have now. It has so much fun, campy entertainment factors to it that every time I see it, I laugh and I smile and I think, this is so over the top. I love it. It's great. Camp entertainment that is also a James Bond film. And so, and that's another thing too. And I'll get, after this, I'll get to the chat. But that's another great thing too about James Bond films, right? James Bond films have this great way of mixing certain other genres with the James Bond film. So it becomes a film of the moment, because it mixes all these other genres together in these different forms, like Moonraker. Moonraker and the Star Wars type of stuff is mixed in there. You can always argue as to whether or not that was successful for you. But in any event, that's an example there. There's also the whole type of Jason Bourne type of film that plays itself out, especially in a film like Quantum of Solace. So there's that kind of aspect. Again, you can question whether or not that's a successful thing artistically. But the point that I want to make is there is also this sort of pattern of mixing tones and styles of the moment, and then creating a different type of James Bond film, which I think this certainly is. And as I say, I now, right now, really enjoy it immensely. for those reasons. And I'll try to be more specific as the live stream progresses. But rather than me occupy the entirety of the discussion, let me now go to the live chat where I left off. And then, excuse me, we will go from there. Excuse me. So Erwin says, you watched the film last night. Again, that's great. Zyrother mentions the Miss Moneypenny sound cue. Scalder 22 is here. Hello. Goodbye, Steed. Konnichiwa and hello. Hello. Konnichiwa. O genki desu ka? Gaza Mania is here. Hello. Cooper Glover says, continues, Sean Connery kind of looks too old to play the part, but then I like Roger Moore, and he was older when he played James Bond. Yeah. Also, we have to remember, just very generally on that point, that Sean Connery, there was quite a bit of, for lack of a better phrase, there was a bit of tension between Sean Connery and the producers of the films because which was one of the reasons which led to Sean Connery not wanting to continue on after You Only Live Twice. So he returned because of I think, a number of reasons. But what's been reported in the making of materials is that he was in return. He came back for this one more time, enticed by a very large sum of money for his salary for this film. And so, but there was still a lot of maybe tension between the producers, although according to for example, the documentary, he when he came back, he was very professional. He was very much, he. There, I don't think there was too much. I mean, let me take that back. He got the job done. Let me put it that way. But you can tell that there are some moments where he's just maybe he's not really into it, but there are other moments when I think he's really into it. So, like, I think there's one point where he's talking about he's talking with all the scientists, and Willard White is there, and he's saying, and they're talking about how they what Professor Dr. Metz is doing with someone like Blofeld. If Metz is this scientist for peace, why is he in league with this supervillain? And they're talking about what the plan is with the diamonds, and how Professor Dr. Metz is this expert in light refraction, and that's according to Willard White. And you get all this montage with the satellite destroying all these sites around the world one at a time, and you've got the great John Barry score with it's kind of like the space type of slow march beat that we got a hint of in You Only Live Twice, and we'll get a lot of in Moonraker. But it's a great sort of space theme, type of theme. And during that montage, there's a moment where they're talking about, they're putting the pieces together, and James Bond says, Doctor, and I'm paraphrasing, he talks about Dr. Metz being able, harnessing the power of these diamonds, and using them to turn the light passes through the satellite, and then the diamonds and light refraction turns them into a high powered laser that has the power to destroy targeted sites. Okay, so when James Bond puts this together, there's a moment where he says light retraction instead of light refraction. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't quite know what the phrase light retraction means. I mean, if you're students or academics of this, maybe you can teach me. But in general, I thought it was light refraction. Even at light refraction, I'm not quite sure of the scientific principle behind how. I mean, I kind of know what light refraction means in physics, but I don't quite know how that turns into a laser. But okay, but that's part of the film, right? But in any event, I always thought it was light refraction, but he says light retraction, and he kind of says, "Oh, light retraction," Oh, and Blofeld's got it, right? And then that's it. But it's again, it's part of the follow up of, or it's part of the suspension of disbelief of the film at that point, because it's just meant to be this stuffed in order to explain the plot. Still, he seems to just be like, light retraction, and Blofeld's. There's no sense of panic in his voice. That's what I'm saying, and I don't. I see those moments as being where he's just doing his job on the one hand, but there are also moments in Sean Connery's performance in this where he is really good, really really good. Like the Peter Franks fight, and he's into it, and he's just and and he really shows afterwards the after effects of the fight. And he's still sweating, and when he drags the body into Tiffany Case's room, he's like, "Oh, I don't know, this fellow's been following me all day today, you know," and he's still trying to compose himself. And he says, "Oh, you've just killed James Bond." He's like, "Is that who it was?" Right? Well, just goes to show you, you know, right? So it's that sort of reaction I think is great when he sees Blofeld again in the penthouse, and he's like, "Blofeld," right? That's real shock on his face. I thought that was also really fantastic. And then there's subtle details like when he at the end when he senses the potent aftershave, right? Um, and I thought that was really quite. And he's like, "Oh, you know." You can see the subtle change on his face as he recognizes the scent, and so and I like these little turns of nuanced performance. I thought they were really quite excellent, and so those are examples of where I think his performance is really great. But I do understand what you're saying also about there are other times when it does seem like he might be a little bit um maybe again doing a job, but we also have to understand, as I say, that the circumstances were such that maybe that's how he was feeling. Again, there was a sense of tension between him and the producers. So um yeah, so there's that. But a great comment though, by the way. And actually, some people refer to the fact that he might look a little bit too old, but I like the I thought like the gray parts of the sides of his head, and there's a little bit of a gray streak in his hair here. I thought it looked I thought it looked really cool actually, and you combine that with his really loud color scheme in his decor in his fashion. You know, when is that I love the color of his tie when he goes to the Willard White summer house and he meets Bambi and Thumper, and he's got that fight with that huge cream colored shirt, and he's walking in with his coat like that. Oh, it's just great stuff, and it's loud and very much very loud and in charge, as it were. But yeah. Okay, going back here. Let's see. Erwin says Sean Connery just looks old. He's a man's man. Yeah. Zyroth says he looks great. He looks great in Zardos. And Erwin says I'm very much impressed how much of the action he does himself. Cannot see Roger Moore do all the physical stuff Connery does here. Yeah. And that fight in the the elevator is, I think, for me, one of the great fights, and it's similar to the fight between Robert Shaw and Sean Connery, I should say Red Grant and James Bond in From Russia with Love, and it's a fight in close proximity in very close quarters. With a lot of physical restrictions due to the small area in which these two combatants are fighting each other. So I thought, and the glass and the slow moving nature of the elevator, and it exceeds the third floor, goes up, I think, to the fourth, and then goes down, back down again after Bond defeats Peter Franks. And the fact that he doesn't have enough room to punch because if he tries, his elbow will smash the glass or something behind, and then it just starts to fight there. So, and you can see in his face just a real snarl and the anger and the drive that Sean Connery has. It's a really wonderful type of uh, uh, type of fight between him and Sean Connery and Joe Robinson. So Peter Franks or I'm sorry, Peter Franks and James Bond. So yeah, I thought that was a great example of that, and uh, so yeah, so I think it doesn't feel like so there is enough of a physical presence of Sean Connery's performance such that when you cut from him to the real physical action of some of the stunt work, I don't think there's a jump for me. It doesn't feel like it's out of sync. It feels very much in sync. So as I say, and I think what people are alluding to here, Sean Connery's performance does lend itself really well to the mode of physicality that's going on. Like in the lift, as you say, our runs. That's great. Um, Rocco Review says, I believe that the comedic tones adds to the craziness and charm, but that's just me personally. Um, and Zyrotha says, yes, there is physical and physical. Yes, I agree. Um, let's see. Um, Henok is here. Hey, Dice Gay. Um, Rod says, Mr. Wint menacing. Yes, Mr. Wint and Mr. Kidd. Although, right, yeah, it's that aftershave or that scent, the perfume, which is his undoing and their undoing, of course, right? Um, and I love Bruce Glover's. I love Bruce Glover, and I'll talk about Winton Kid more later. But I love Bruce Glover and Putter Smith's body language. I mean, Putter Smith has that wonderful, almost slouch to his body, and he's tall and he's got that slouch. Great stuff. And then I love how Bruce Glover walks. If you notice, whenever he walks around a corner, there's a certain way that his body tilts to the side or tilts, and he walks around. There's a moment when they're walking away, walking out of the slumber. Uh, um, Out of the Morton slumber a crematorium area, and they're walking out, and the dramatic music from the funeral, da, 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 and they're walking out through the door, and there's a way that Bruce Glover's Mr. Wint just slides or glides across the floor. It's really great. There's some speaking of walks, there are some really great walks here. I think Sean Connery, I mean, like him or not in this film, he is undeniably Sean Connery. He's huge. He's quite like almost like quite volcanic in many ways, and he physically he's just this huge presence. So when he's walking, he's just got this like he is so cool. He's like, I don't care. I'm walking through here, and I'm Sean Connery. So his walk is just, I think, great. Also, I must say that um, maybe a lot can be said about the Felix Leiters of the films, and here's another Felix Leiter version. Norman Burton Felix Leiter, and he's got that. Oh, Jerry, you can go to lunch. I'll take care of it. Or, oh, come on, guys, let's go hit that tunnel. And that's what I love. The Felix Leiter walk. It's very like tiny step type of Felix. So whenever he's walking or running, he's like there's like lots of steps that he's doing, and so I just like that way that he's just like really into it, but he doesn't quite travel as much, or he needs more steps in order to cover the same type of ground as say Sean Connery would. I love that kind of that it adds to it. It's an interesting way to give a sense, subliminal sense of energy, I suppose. But there's something, maybe something should be said about the way the walks of the many Felix Leiters here. This is, I think, one of my favorite Felix Leiter walks in any James Bond film. But anyway, um, let's see. Armin is here. Hello. Let's see. Okay. Gazamania says another thing they did at the start of the film was speed up Connery's voice when he says, "My name is Bond, James Bond." In the trailer, it was normal. So yeah, in the trailer, it was noticeably deeper, right? My name is Bond, and then it's my name is Bond, James Bond, and he's talking with Marie, right? I think. Um, my name is Bond, James, and he's walking down the steps there. Um, and yeah, let's see. All right. Um, just scrolling down here. Armand says, I found the plot to be hard to follow. Yes. Okay, so let me just stop here and use Armand's great comment as a just a jumping off point about the plot. So yes, so the plot is very confusing. At least I found it to be confusing when I first saw it. So okay, so the plot involves diamond smuggling that we assume has been taking place over the course of a number of years. I think the amount of time, it's still a little bit confusing. The reference was made to 3 years. Tiffany Case says 3 years, like Willard White hasn't been seen out of the penthouse in she says 3 years. There's a point later in the film where James Bond is talking to Blofeld and he says 5 years, which is no one has seen Willard White in 5 years, so he makes for the perfect kidnap victim. And the whole and so I'm not sure exactly how long Blofeld has kept Willard White, kidnapped him and kept him prisoner. But for however long it was, let's say for the lack of you know, just for the sake of a conversation, let's say 2 years, let's say 3 years. Okay, so Blofeld 3 years ago arranged to kidnap Willard White, and probably had something to do with a plan. I can assume, I'm not sure, but Bert Saxby, who is Willard White's right hand man, is in cahoots. Um, with Blofeld, and we know that Bert Saxby knows Blofeld because there's a moment later in the film where Blofeld turns off his voice box on the phone and he becomes the real Blofeld, and so we understand that Blofeld and Bert Saxby are in cahoots, and Bert Saxby knows Blofeld. Okay, so if Bert Saxby has this close relationship with Willard White, we could assume that maybe, I don't know, something about the Blofeld-Bert Saxby relationship perhaps led to the circumstances that allowed for Blofeld, with Bert Saxby's support, I don't know, to kidnap Willard White and put him somewhere, keep him alive, but still kidnap him. The thing is, no one would know that Willard White was kidnapped because no one has seen Willard White out in public for whatever it is, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. Okay. So now Blofeld has him kidnapped, and Bert Saxby is in cahoots with Blofeld. So maybe with that support, Blofeld, with the help of some telephone voice box and the like, can pretend to be Willard White. So now Blofeld has the luxury of relying on the Willard White Empire as his cover. Using that cover, he seems to be at the same time engaging in an operation to smuggle diamonds from South Africa, or from places we assume we see at the beginning, South Africa, mines in South Africa. And we see diamonds being smuggled from point to point to point to point to point. The end point being the laboratory in Nevada, where Professor Dr. Metz is using the diamonds to create this super laser, because of the way that light will refract through diamonds, I think. And if there are enough diamonds used in just the right way, then the power of the super laser becomes very powerful indeed, to the point where it becomes destructive. So they need a certain number of diamonds in order to reach this level of destruction of this laser. And so in order to get these diamonds, I mean, it's not easy to get diamonds. So they need to rely on the smuggling ring, the smuggling line, this chain. So for the past 3 years, or however many years they have been using this diamond smuggling chain to essentially stockpile diamonds at the scientific end. And then at the point of the film, we see the last amount of diamonds that are needed. And so this is the last shipment of diamonds and following the line. And because it's the last shipment of diamonds, after each point is passed along the smuggling line, then Blofeld's henchmen, Wint and Kidd, go and eliminate each of the points one at a time. So that means first we see the elimination of Dr. Tynan, and then the helicopter pilot, and then Mrs. Whistler, right? Because after all, U is for umbrella. We take it lest it rain. We hope we shan't need it until we're home again, right? So, but we go from point, and then after Mrs. Whistler, then it's Tiffany Case, right? And then from Tiffany Case we get to Peter Franks, and then from Peter Franks it's Shady Tree, or so I guess it's Slumber to Shady Tree, although it's not quite Slumber. Slumber isn't really the next point, because Morton Slumber gives the diamonds back to Bond, or to Peter Franks, which I never quite understood why that was. But anyway, let's skip over Slumber. So it's Peter Franks via Slumber, then Shady Tree. From Shady Tree, I don't know what the next point is. Is it? I think it's maybe it could be maybe Bert Saxby and then to Metz and then to I don't I'm not sure what the next stage is after Shady Tree, but the point is that after each person has passed up the diamonds, then Wint and Kit will kill them. And so we see Tynan, then the helicopter pilot, then Mrs. Whistler. Then next we see Tiffany Case. We don't necessarily see Tiffany Case in danger from Wint and Kid, because by that time James Bond enters the scene, and then the CIA, etc. We do see some Peter Frank's action at the slumber in Nevada with the excuse me with the casket and the burning of the casket, which is also really, that was a really weird scene for me when I first saw it. It's like this huge. How is he going to get out of this? What's going? How is he going to? And it's like then you see this guy shady. The dimes are phonies, right? Or something. So it's great, and it's like, why? What's going on? But it's just anyway, and you have to kind of put two and two together as to what happened. But anyway, so Winton Kid tried to eliminate Peter Franks that way, didn't work. Then they get rid of Shady Tree, didn't work. And then they realized they needed Shady Tree alive, because at this point they realized, Bert Saxby and then Blofeld realized that the diamonds that they were dealing with at a certain point were phonies, were paste. And so then because this was at the time when Sean Connery or James Bond intervened with the assistance of the CIA once he's in the United States, right? US jurisdiction. Okay. And then so at this point, he needs the real diamonds in order to. So the point is that James Bond needs to find out what the end point of this diamond smuggling stockpiling is. His whole mission is to find out who is doing the smuggling. And so at this point he doesn't know, and so he needs the real diamonds in order to see what Tiffany Case will do with them, and to see what she will do as far as the next step, because at this point he doesn't trust Tiffany Case, and Tiffany Case doesn't trust him, and they don't know who she doesn't know who he is yet anyway. And so he uses the real diamonds with the help of Felix Leiter in order to see what she will do. And then when he sees her he realized that after she took the real diamonds, she put them in some place in the airport that would then be picked up by who we later discover in the van to be Bert Saxby. And then there's a trade-off between Bert Saxby and Metz at a uh, at a a gas station somewhere. And then from there, Metz takes the diamonds to his lab out in the middle of the desert. And then we see through the great Klaus Hergesheimer ploy, we see that Sean Connery or James Bond realizes that there's some use of diamonds and a satellite. And then later we realize that this is all under the Willard White operation, and then Bond realizes that Blofeld has taken over the top of the Willard White operation, so he's using this cover in order to create this diamond powered laser. And then we realize later, after it's launched into space, that it is a laser that's going to be used for destructive purposes. And we realize too that Professor Dr. Metz is very key as the scientific head of this operation. Although there's this interesting little development as far as Metz's character. He seems to be a man who is a proponent of peace, and we get from a few lines between Blofeld and Metz that we think Blofeld probably lied to Metz, saying that he wants to use the power of the laser in order to stop the Cold War and to bring peace at the end of the Cold War. Because this is still 1971 and the Cold War tensions are still there. So we understand that Metz, as a proponent of peace, went in league with Blofeld, foolishly thinking that Blofeld was also a man of peace. Well, we realize that Blofeld was not a man of peace, and so, so therein lies the laser. Now, in order to control the laser from the ground, you need some kind of tape, some kind of tape mechanism, which looks like a cassette tape. And so that leads into the cassette tape type of intrigue at the very end with the oil rig. There's a little bit of confusion too, because the cassette tape motif is also used for the voice box technology, if I'm remembering correctly. But in any event, that tape motif is used, although we realize that the control station is the oil rig. And so by the end, That means that the destruction of the oil rig probably means the destruction of the laser, although we're not quite sure because the diamonds are still up there in space, apparently. It's just no one can control them, I think, although I'm not quite sure yet. But so they're still up there, although the oil rig is destroyed, right? And then with that, we have the last remnants of the Blofeld Willard White operation, although Willard White is now alive and we assume now taken control of his operation once again. And Winton Kid have their final battle with Bond on the cruise ship. The end. So that's the plot, I think, of the film. And it's I think it's really it is confusing because I don't think there's a scene that all the characters are standing in a room and everything is explained. You know what I mean? It's not like there is a an overview scene. There, it's not like there's a scene in the rumpus room of Goldfinger's ranch, or there isn't a thing like that where um, Stromberg is talking to Roger Moore's Bond about what his plan is, and this is what everything he did. That's why he did everything. There isn't anything like that. There is a little bit of a hint of it between Blofeld and Bond, but nothing to the sort of the traditional James Bond trait film that we might be used to in another James Bond film. So, in that sense, I understand it if the plot seems a little bit confusing. It was for me very much so, but I think that's the general line of it. And so, right, and Bond says at the very beginning to him, why do we does our section need to handle simple smuggling matter, right? And so it seems like a really just routine thing, and it's not worth MI6's time, but apparently it was because it led to this huge world crisis involving Blofeld and lasers. So good on M for trusting Sir Donald enough to put James Bond on the case. So that's I think the plot of the film. So please correct me if I'm wrong, or please add anything you want in the chat for embellishment of that plot description. Let's see. All right, going back here. Erwin says, every time I watch this movie, I wonder who is working for who. A bit complicated with no real reason being so. Yeah, so I think I was trying to. It's not clear exactly who knows who is working for whom. So for example, the I guess for lack of I guess they're petty gangsters who pick up Peter Franks at the air James Bond Peter Franks at the airport. The stiff, the deceased back there, right? And well, I got a brother, right? And they seem to be working. I don't know who they're working for. Maybe they're working for Morton Slumber. Maybe they're working for Tiffany Case. It seems like maybe they're in cahoots or working for Tiffany Case from the way we see them react in the hotel room after they throw Plenty O'Toole into the swimming pool. He's like, I didn't know there was a pool down there, right? And that has a great line to it. What does James Bond say? When he takes Plenty O'Toole back to his hotel room and he sees the gangsters there, and he's what does he say? Right, for once, you have more than my hands up or something. So he's yeah. So, what was I saying? So the gangsters are they seem to be working for Tiffany Case. I'm not sure, but or what exactly that's about. But Tiffany Case does have a certain level of authority. We discover. And so, but Tiffany Case doesn't. We're not sure who she's working for, but she's apparently she's not working for Blofeld, and we realize that because her allegiances switch from Blofeld to Bond's almost immediately. And she is herself, I think, a petty criminal who is now basically arrested by the U.S. government, and she's now kind of working, maybe becomes allies with the CIA, although that's not. We're not quite sure what's going to happen to her. Maybe she will go to prison after all of this is said and done. Who knows? But But that's her what she's doing. Uh, the gangsters, I'm not quite sure. Metz works with Blofeld, that's for sure, because we see them and they know each other. Bert Saxby, as I said, knows Blofeld, so we see them. They work each other. So at the very least, my hunch is that Bert Saxby and Blofeld were in cahoots from the very beginning, and then Bert Saxby, whatever, had it in for Willard White, or wanted enough, was tempted by Blofeld enough to want to go along with Blofeld to kidnap Willard White. Who knows? Everyone else, it's still up in the air. We're not sure. Okay, Wint and Kidd probably know who Blofeld is because of the fact that it's the elevator, and when they pick up Bond after he's been gassed and he's knocked out, and then they take him to the pipes somewhere, pipeline in the middle of the desert, and so they probably know Blofeld as well. But so that's why they are the ones who are assigned the task of killing all the stages of the diamond smuggling chain. Going forward, because that's part of Blofeld's plan. But everyone else, it's unclear if they know exactly if they're working for Willard White or Blofeld. But my hunch is that they don't know that it's Blofeld. So let's see. Okay, here we go. Now let me go back. Okay, sorry about this. All right. Sorry, I just lost my place here. Just give me one moment here. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so now I'm at the point where there's talk. Cooper Glover mentioned the moon vehicle, the moon buggy chase. It looks odd. I think that's the point. I think if you look at the documentary, Ken Adam, who is involved in the design and sets, wanted this. He says, I love the way Ken Adam describes it. He said, I wanted something that looked grotesque. And I, it certainly cheated because it's really weird and it's jumpy and you've got all these arms and things. It feels very unwieldy and not practical, but that's the point. And it's interesting too that the chase leads to the I guess I what are those bikes called? Those like huge puffy tire dirt bikes. And it's interesting how the chase over the sand dunes is such that if I'm remembering correctly, the it's not like the Bond does stuff with clever maneuvering with the moon buggy that then shifts or knocks the bikers off and then makes them tumble to the ground. It's just merely that he's able to sustain the driving speed enough while the bikers, I think, in essence, trip over themselves, I think, and they just run over dunes and then they fall over, I think. So and then you've got that great John Barry score, da 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 da, right? It's great stuff with like the high, I think it's flutes, and then it goes into, if you hear it on the soundtrack, it goes into the great, da 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 da. That's great stuff, which is then reprised actually, I think later in a later part of the film, but. That's one of my favorite tracks, actually, John Barry score. But I like that scene because it's ludicrous and it's meant to. I think it's like you can have an exciting thing or you can have something that's ludicrous, and I think at that point in the film, I think that was what was needed. And there's my favorite moment that happened before with the astronauts simulation, and Bond walks through and it's like, oh, was it stop him, Harry? And the guy's like that. I love that. That's such a great odd moment. And every time I see that, I just laugh out loud. That's one of my favorite moments. That and what was it? I did this before, but it was the moment in in um, in Amsterdam, excuse me, where. Sorry about this. Just put that down there for a second. Amsterdam, where it was was this, that was my. I love that. That's one of my favorite moments too. It's just so weird, and it's a very clever type of just a what is it? It just you just see it like what the heck's going on? It just disappears immediately. So that and the gravity simulation, whatever it was, I think it's that's great. And a moment too, like Blofeld dressed up as a woman and escaping the Willard White complex, and then just see a flash of it, and then I so dreaded the thought of making this trip alone, right? And the way that his eyes light up when he says the word alone, looking at Tiffany Case as they drive off. That's another great moment too. Again, some people might think, "Oh, what's going on? It's weird." But it's that's part of the campy fun of the film, and it's just little details that make it so much fun for me. But that's great stuff. Let's see. Rocco Review says how silly it is makes it great in my opinion. Caleb says Sean Connery baby. Kubrick Glover says I think the oil rig at the end of the film is kind of a disappointment because it's not like Ken Adams' lush sets. It does feel. I admit too. It does feel. There's little bit of a sense of the anticlimactic, but there are some interesting. I mean, it feels anticlimactic to me too because there isn't any necessary. It's fun to see Blofeld in such a vulnerable position in the bathos sub, and there's uh, you could have killed me. Lower away, lower, lower, not up. And it's got all. And then the 007 theme comes in great, splendid display and triumph, and everything is just going to chaos, and then 1 minute and counting, and I think that's all applied in this just almost campy way that is perhaps in a way designed to in one sense to call attention to itself, and it's almost making fun of the whole idea of the countdown and just turning it on its head, right? And then you add onto that the blue and the orange color motif of the people who work there on the rig, uh and then so it's not meant to be the well-established James Bond trait of the huge villain layer necessarily, but it's just meant to be, I think, a different spin on it. So in that perspective, I think it can go along that way. But I understand what you say because it is markedly different in terms of the tone that we might have seen in, say, a film like, I don't know, You Only Live Twice or something. But Erwin says the music cue during the buggy chase is a bit out of. Oh, really? I thought it was really effective actually, but that's okay. That's very fair. Mike Eli's here. Hello, Caleb. Hey. Let's see. Just scrolling down here. All right. Erwin says the movie really looks of its time. Hannock says Charles Gray is miscast as Blofeld, in my opinion, because generally he doesn't possess any hair at all. Okay, so Blofeld equals no hair. Okay, I can get that because I think a lot of his iconic presence that we have seen in You Only Live Twice and on Her Majesty's Secret Service, right? Played by actors who have depicted Blofeld without hair. Okay, so I get that. Although we have to understand, and then also there's a moment a little bit in a later Roger Moore film which carries on that no hair Blofeld. So that's cool. But we also have to remember too that in the early depictions of Blofeld in the Terrence Young era, so like From Russia with Love and Thunderball, is we never saw his face. And I don't want to get into too much detail, but if you look very closely, you always see the back of it or the top of his head, and he has hair. So Anthony Dawson type of hair, but it's not like he was always bald, right? I guess he became bald, or maybe sometimes, like when I was a student, I there was maybe a period where I wanted to try the bald hairstyle out, so I shaved it, or I had it shaved, and I felt it was really comfortable, very much so, and it felt nice, and it felt cool when the breeze hit my head, etc. But maybe it was one of those things where sometimes also, right, sometimes we feel, at least I do, one of these days, we feel like we want to have a change of hairstyle. So I think that could explain it if you want to try to link it in terms of the inner logic of the what is it, what's the phrase, cinematic universe of James Bond, I suppose. Although if we do that, then we have to do a lot of uh, of sort of contortions ourselves, because as we know, the casting is just all over the place, and there's no consistent casting. I mean, uh, right? Suddenly, it's a shock, I think, to a lot of people to find out that Henderson is Blofeld. My goodness, who'd have thunk it, right? And not only that, right? The U.S. representative, who was in You Only Live Twice, is Morton Slumber. My goodness, or Klaus Hergesheimer, right? He used to work for NASA or I don't know, right? So you see all these people, and not to mention Shane Rimmer, right? So, but you see all these people, sort of carried over, in particular from You Only Live Twice days, and then you see them in these different roles, and you always have to think, well, maybe Morton Slumber used to work for U.S. government, and then he decided to quit, and he wanted to go into private life, and so maybe part of it was doing the slumber thing. I don't know, but so that can become a lot of fun. But um, anyway, yeah, Charles Gray, though, I thought had a certain there was this great way that there were a couple things that I think Charles Gray did really well. Okay, so the first is he he was able to create this really, like, oozing sense of like evil and villainy, such that you really wanted him to get his comeuppance. It was just, oh, I can't wait until this guy gets what he deserves at the end. And you feel this sense of satisfaction when Bond has him in that little crane thing there in the bathos sub. Although I must admit that there's a point where you hear his voice and it cuts out, so you don't quite know if Blofeld lives or dies. The point, though, is that perhaps Blofeld lives again, lives to see another day, although maybe certain legal entanglements will prevent that from happening in a full force sort of way. So we'll have to get a little bit of that for your eyes only until much later, of course. But um, uh, what was I saying? Um, yes. So, but I think Charles Gray does that great sense of menace that you really want him to get his comeuppance, which is really important. Also, he is willing to take a lot of risk. And I think one of the biggest risks ever for any actor is to go in drag. And it's. I mean, there's, of course, there's nothing wrong with it, but of course, it is. I think a very still it's something that I'm sure not many people are willing to do for the sake of a film that will then be captured and be seen potentially forever. And I think that kind of willingness to do that and to show this side of the character and show it in this way, I think was really, really great. And it's also, we also see Charles Gray in one of his most memorable roles, say in Rocky Horror Picture Show, and there's a certain sense of a willingness to do anything for the sake of the film, and I admire that very much. I admire that very much, and so I like Charles Gray a lot in this, and I think there's a sense of menace and confusion too. I mean, the whole thing with the doubles and the different Blofeld. I thought it was really weird and confusing, and it was great. It was great. So, and he's got great posture too. I mean, there's this thing about posture in James Bond films. I think his posture, his body posture, is perhaps the best of all the performers there. Perhaps maybe lower in the list. I mean, Sean Connery, he's great in physical, but his posture seems a little bit hunched over. I don't know. Maybe it's just my own eyes, but maybe he's a hunch over. I think him and Putter Smith have probably are on the bottom end of the best posture list of the film. But I think Charles Gray is at the top of that list. I don't know. I don't know how you feel, but. And also, this is very consistent Blofeld, right? Because like in On Her Majesty's Secret Service, what does Blofeld decide to do with Bond? Does he decide to kill him? Oh no, 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 no! I'm gonna put you in a little closet in my layer, and so I know that you won't have anything, you won't intervene or intrude in my plans. Instead of killing you, I'll just put you in a little closet and then just forget about you. And so we saw something similar happen with Blofeld and excuse me, and James Bond in On Her Majesty's Secret Service a couple years before, of course. But let's see. Armin says, I found the prologue to be humorous. Yes, yes. And so thank you very much, too. I forgot to mention this. So the prologue is great because this is also, whoops, that's, I hope someone, maybe that's someone who's agreeing with the fact that I said the prologue is great. I hope. So anyway, the prologue is great. And that it is because it's meant to be, I think in many ways, a kind of subtle follow-up, right, to the events of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And that brings me to an interesting point about how this is related to the film On Her Majesty's Secret Service, right? Because a lot happens in the film On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and a lot is left unresolved, right, at the end of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And so when you get to the start of this film, it does feel like the natural follow through conclusion to the events that ended the earlier film. So in that sense, it does feel connected, right? And then there are so then it's the idea of a hunt after Blofeld, but it's really clever in that it doesn't have to be the same continuity as On Her Majesty's Secret Service, although it can. Because, right, at the end of You Only Live Twice, we realize that Sean Connery's Bond has just by the end of that film met Blofeld. And so we can therefore see that maybe the start of Diamonds Are Forever is, instead of a continuity with On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which I think it is, it can also serve as a continuity directly from You Only Live Twice, kind of. And so in that way, I think it's interesting. It's almost in a meta way playing with the notion that George Lazenby was his own Bond, and maybe that existed in its own universe, and then Sean Connery's back, and so it's now we're in the Sean Connery universe. In that sense, George Lazenby's Bond is in a separate alternate reality, or something like I don't know. I mean, we can. It allows for that, but in any event, it is a continuation of the Bond following and wanting to kill Blofeld or taking his revenge out on Blofeld. And so we have these quick scenes. So we have right in Japan, or it's a very quick stereotypical, right? It's so campy. I love how stereotypical it is of Japan. Like, how are you going to depict Japan in the space of what 30 seconds or something that you have? Okay, let's have a screen and a tatami floor and this like this that kind of music, and then we'll have a guy who's Asian who's wearing a kimono. It was okay, perfect. This is Japan, right? Okay, so and then you have you don't show the face of Connery yet, which is you don't show him until a few scenes in, which is very similar kind of to the Dr. No way of introducing Sean Connery at the very start of the series. So that's a very interesting. But there are a couple interesting moments of the prologue, which is that uh, I love how the person who's Asian at the beginning, who I think is meant to be Japanese, where is he? And he's got that look on his face. He's like that because Bond has his arm to his neck or something, and he says Cairo, but his lips don't move, and so that's an interesting sense of dubbing, or he's one heck of a great ventriloquist, whatever the case may be. So that leads to that's a very memorable line, Cairo. Um, that also reminds me later of the moment where Willard White says the word or says the place Baja, right? So I love how for whatever reason this film seems to be focusing on geographical places, and it just says it in a just over the top kind of way. Cairo and Baja. But anyway, here in the prologue, it's Cairo, and that leads to the casino, and then Marie, and the I thought very shocking way that Connery removed the bikini top, but it wasn't in a kind of sexual advance, but it was really to threaten her and really to essentially to kind of really attack her because he needed information. So this very dangerous Bond that was back in this way, in this very vicious way. And so I think that's you know, that in many ways marking the return of Connery's Bond. And then we have, of course, the scene with Blofeld and the whole notion of the plastic surgery that I think is introduced very economically, with the close-ups of the various heads models, and then the, the what is it, the mashed potatoes. And if you watch the making of documentary, one of the best parts of these making of documentaries is to hear Ken Adams' story about the mashed potatoes, and to see him just laugh at just the way. I love how Ken Adams says the word mashed potato in the documentary. So, so anyway, this is meant to suggest that this is a kind of plastic surgery in order to transform this person into a Blofeld double. Um, and then, of course, we see Bond infiltrate the place by, I guess, killing one of the doctors or nurse attendants or something, who we see on the ground before with a mustache, right? With a must. That's an interesting thing too. People apparently who have mustaches are not long for a James Bond film. We see a lot of people with mustaches die, and so I think we saw a similar thing happen early on with From Russia with Love, if I'm not mistaken. So anyone with a mustache in a James Bond film, watch out, right? Um, right, it's almost like the phenomenon of red shirts in Star Trek. But anyway, the what was it? So then we have the a very quick fight between Bond and Blofeld's guards and Blofeld. And I like there's an interesting way how Bond said, you know, has to get his hands up. He says hands up, and the way that Sean Connery puts his hands up, it's like kind of a playful, almost. All right, here we go again type of way. And there's an interesting, almost effeminate flick of the hands, which I always found very interesting. And so and then it leads to a great fight, and then the kickoff of the John Barry driving, you know, and then the driving score that leads to the Welcome to Hell Blofeld and the cat, and which is changed slightly for the new audio track. But and then it goes into the wonderful song "Diamonds Are Forever," and then I'm very bad at my impressions, of course, but you know, wah, wah, that's the bit in the intro of the song "Diamonds Are Forever." So. Um, so anyway, yeah, it's a great opening. It's not super packed with any stunts necessarily, although it's a great stunt with a twirl, and then Bond turns on the mud, and then he lays down. So I like the little twirl that Bond gives at the beginning there before he turns on the mud. But yeah, that's great stuff. Um, yeah. Anyway. Let's see. Armin says, I found the cat wearing the diamond necklace weird. Oh, that's interesting. I thought it was actually very essential because it needed to establish who was the real Blofeld. And whoever the real Blofeld was, that was the real cat. And the real cat is indicated by the necklace. So, right? Was it right idea, wrong pussy, right? So that's the situation there. So let's see. Uh, let's see here. Um, yeah, but in terms of the cat wanting, yeah, Hennock says, yep, the cat doesn't look like it wants to be there. Although there is a moment where uh, Blofeld is seen on the phone right after Bond escapes from the underground tunnel, and it has that great John Barry, duh, and it has a jump cut into the Willard White the outer location of the Willard White Hotel, and it has a jump cut, and then it cuts into Blofeld in the office there. And he's on the phone, and he's talking with who he thinks is Bert Saxby, but it's actually Bond using the Bert Saxby voice box. And you see in the background the cat. Actually, the cat's there, and there's a dish of cat food, and the cat's eating, and it looks into the camera. So I don't know. I mean, the cat looks pretty content in that scene. So but anyway, let's see. Okay. Rocco Review says tone change in film is always a good decision for me personally, such as a film like Do the Right Thing. Okay. All right. So yes. So yeah, tone change is a very interesting concept. Yes. Um, let's see. Oh, sorry. Cooper Glover 72 says, I found Blofeld's men with their zigzag lightning helmets look kind of silly. Couldn't take them seriously. Yeah, but right. Uh, um, when has the Blofeld uh, f- uh, official um, dress code been anything but slightly campy? I would actually say that this is probably. I mean, it seems like it's pretty. It's pretty practical. Um, I mean, the color scheme notwithstanding, of course, but it seems pretty practical. I think probably the prize for the most practicality in terms of dress code of villain layerdom would probably have to go to Goldeneye. Everyone looks like that looks like I don't know some yeah, whatever it is. But anyway, the dress code is really like it's casual business, I think, in Goldeneye. But here it's yeah, but I don't know which would you say is better? Is it you only live twice dress code or diamonds are forever dress code? I don't know. I think probably I personally would go with the diamonds are forever dress code personally. Although there is of course a stylistic charm to the you only live twice dress code, but still, let's see here. Um, Let's see. Armin says, I found it hard to figure out what's going on. Cooper Glover says, the Mr. Kidd and Mr. Wint, I think is right. I think his name now might not be made today because they're portrayed as stereotypical gay men. Um, okay, so Wint and Kidd. So let's talk about Wint and Kidd because I haven't. I've hesitated about that, but Wint and Kidd, Mr. Wint, Bruce Glover, and Mr. Kidd, Putter Smith. Now these are really, I think, one of the strengths of the film. I think they are great characters, and I think they are really over the top villain henchmen that are meant to be portrayed as these right, they're hitmen, and their job is to kill people, to make hits on people, but they have carte blanche apparently to be able to execute their mission in any way that they would like, and so they are not just hitmen, they are sadistic hitmen. They are creative sadistic hitmen, and they are psychopaths in that sense because they are just so villainous. But their creativity is their undoing, or their want to be so creative and so clever by half is their undoing, because it means that they are unable to off Bond when they had the chance. They could have killed Bond very easily. He was unconscious. They had him in the trunk and all this, but instead of ensuring that Bond was dead, they instead had him unconscious when they knew he was still alive and just left him in a pipe. And they assumed that he would be buried in the ground forever. And that's an okay, but we know now from the film that that wasn't the case. But and we also know that the vanity, I guess we could call it vanity, although maybe it's a metaphor for vanity. Let's put it that way. When I'm talking about Mr. Wint's um, perfume and how this becomes the key to unlocking the identity of Wint and Kidd at the very end. And this is interesting too because it seems like Wint and Kidd operate on this basis of they will go with the over the top, overly creative ruse of killing people so long as they are not found out. Once they are found out, especially like, for example, by Bond at the very end on the cruise ship, then they have no hesitation to go the aggressive direct route, right? All this time they've been doing this over the top creative way of trying to kill people, but then suddenly when they're found out, then they have right. Wint just suddenly tries to garrote Bond while holding him there, while Kidd tries to essentially stab him with some kebabs that are on fire, right? So So it's all about the clandestine nature of their job and not being caught. And as long as they're not being caught, then they have carte blanche to do whatever over the top, over the creative way that they see fit in order to want to off their victim. Okay, so that seems to be the MO of Winton Kid as hitmen in this film. Now, right, they do have a right, and I think uh they aren't villains because they are also gay. They are villains because they are villains. And so I don't see them, right. I mean, I know that Cooper Glover used stereotypical in quotes, and I think I understand that that meant that it's not stereotypical, right, because uh, they are villains. And so but I like their villainy because of the way that I like their one-liners, and I like their real dryness, and they are very, very dry, and they're just the way that the lines are delivered is just, you know, it's really, really just it's almost like Putter Smith is almost like he's coming out of the Robert Bresson school of acting, kind of. It's just he's there, and he's like a Robert Bresson. We call them models or models instead of actors, and I think I'm saying this in a very complimentary way, because he's just standing there and he's just going like this, and then even when he's about to kill Bond, his face expression doesn't change, except at the end when he's on fire. He's like, ah, he suddenly becomes on fire. I suppose that, yeah. But apart from that moment, yeah, his face expression usually never changes. There's a smile, there's a cackle, but it's pretty much like a Robert Bresson type of acting. And so, and I mean that I'm not trying to be like jokey here. I'm being very serious here. And so there's this way of Putter Smith and who he was as a real person, as a real a musician, and how he brought something of the air of the quirky. And it was just in that way of his regular way of speaking that alone was very sinister. And I thought that was brilliant. And then you combine that with the very, I think, wonderfully applied acting style of Bruce Glover as Wint, and I thought that was a great combination. And as I say, there's this way that uh, Bruce Glover shows anger and menace. Remember that moment when he's about to open the wine bottle and he's going like this, and then he goes, it's such a great moment. And the way, and I think Bruce Glover's is in the documentary is talking about how he was really focusing in on at looking at people, and looking in particular at Putter Smith and Mr. Kidd, and just looking at him. And I thought his gaze was really very menacing, and not because he was a villain type of gaze. And I thought that was great. It was just a great combination of these characters and their the actors and the performances. And then you combine that with the dialogue. That's great stuff. Um, right. Every so often, I'll say just out loud, randomly, Dr. Tynan sent us, right? Or, uh, right. Uh, if God had wanted man to fly, and then you can fill in the rest, my friends. So, but it's great stuff. I think Winton Kid are the great, and it goes into one of my favorite John Barry score moments. This is one of my absolute favorite score moments, which is the after Bond has infiltrated Willard White's penthouse and discovered that Blofeld is behind the whole plot. Blofeld does a little kind of explanation, but not really. And then Blofeld says, Blofeld has Bond go into the elevator, press L for lobby, which is, I think, the middle button. But in fact, it doesn't go to the lobby, because then we see the stun gas or whatever knock Bond out, and we see the elevator go past the lobby, B1, B2, I think B3, and then WW, which is assuming the ground, the super hidden underground level, right? And then we see the elevator doors open, and then Bond is lying there unconscious, and we hear the John Barry score. It's the very low dun dun dun, and this is the slow, menacing theme of Winton Kid. And as we hear this dun dun, we see across the frame 2 feet walking and stopping in front. Ah, I don't know how you feel, my friends, but for me, this is one of those moments where I just, when I see it, if it were VHS, I rewind and play it again, rewind and play. There's this great sense of the way that the feet walk across and stop. There's almost a ballet type of grace to the movement, combined with the the perfect application of the John Barry theme, or the John Barry score, which is the Winton Kint theme, and the idea that, oh no, they're back, because we hadn't seen them for quite a while in the film up to now, and then they return, and it's a really momentous moment. A moment, that's terrible, sorry, momentous moment, who said, but it's a really momentous. And so that uh, that's just that's a great example of why therefore I enjoy Winton Kid, and why I enjoy uh, John Barry, and why I enjoy this film. That's for me. That could be for me the best moment, actually, in terms of an artistic uh, jump in the film, for lack of a better phrase. So, um, let's see here. Yeah. Um, oh, and I love Putter Smith's delivery when Bert Saxby says, we didn't get the real diamond, so we need Shady Tree alive. Well, that's most annoying. It's great stuff. Um, okay, so let's see. Um, all right, going down here. Um, I'm just scrolling down here. It's great conversation here. Let's see. Oh, Cool Kids Clips is here. Hello, hello. It's nice to see you. All right. Um, Gray Bow says, I've watched a few Bond films. Actually, I wasn't impressed. Their action and plots seem to be worn out, outdated, and expected by today's standards. So, all right, that's fair enough. No problem. You don't have to enjoy them if they're not your cup of tea. That's great. And there, as you say, there are a lot of other great action films out there. So, no worries at all, my friend. No worries. Let's see. Yeah, and then there's talk about Connery and what he got out of this film, and also, uh, yeah, and Cooper Glover 72 refers to John Gavin, uh, and what he would have made, what that would have been. That would have been really. That's one of the great what ifs, actually. How this film would have been with John Gavin. I can't even imagine. Um, and it's interesting too how much later, when they were trying to think about who's going to be cast as James Bond in Live and Let Die, and there was reference in the Live and Let Die making of documentary about Burt Reynolds, and then I think the edict came down from the producers, how, no, we needed to have Bond as a British person, not as American, which is actually, it's just inconsistent with the idea of casting John Gavin in the first place. So, very interesting development, how this thing goes, and I think that probably has a lot to do with the sense of maybe, maybe for lack of a better word, sense of panic, or sense of lack of confidence that maybe the producers and the powers that be had in this situation, because it was a pretty precarious situation in terms of the relative lack of blockbuster success of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, the fact that the new James Bond was not going to continue on anymore. So it was a bit of a panic mode type of situation. So, and also, not so much. There's a bit of bad blood between the producers and Connery, etc. So, um, maybe that explains why they wanted to go with John Gavin. Again, I don't want to take anything away from John Gavin, of course, I think he has a really great screen charm and personality, which could have been really interesting. And I don't, I have nothing wrong necessarily against, I have nothing inherently against quote unquote an American actor for Bond. I think it could have played out really interestingly, but as it happens, it turned out to be Sean Connery, and the rest, as they say, is history. So, excuse me. I think one of the questions though that does come up is what if what if okay, what if Sean Connery had done On Her Majesty's Secret Service? And by extension, what if George Lazenby had stayed on to do one more James Bond film, Diamonds Are Forever? What would have happened? That is completely alternate universe territory, right? Because and I don't want to get too much into Honor Majesties at the moment, but let me just say very briefly that it's my view that I love Honor Majesties and I love Sean Connery, but I think if Sean Connery had decided to be in one more film, especially given the way that the trajectory of the Sean Connery Bond films had been up to You Only Live Twice, I think it would have been a completely different film than what we eventually got. And in that sense, I'm not sure what kind of dramatic effect it would have had it been a Sean Connery film on Her Majesty's Secret Service. So that's one thing. The other thing too is, of course, had George Lazenby stayed on for one other film that was Diamonds Are Forever, then it would have been, I think, a very different film than what we eventually got. And I would probably dare say too that it might have been, I don't want to say exactly, but it might have been perhaps something that could be said to be similar in tone to what we eventually got later in a sequence of films like Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. You know, how those films have the sequel relationship to each other. Well, I would dare say that perhaps it would have been, that could have happened had we had a George Lazenby Diamonds Are Forever. So my sense it could have been very much it could have been a really interesting turn of events, but as it happens, it didn't work out that way, and we got a very different film in tone from Honor Majesties. But at the same time, too, let me just I don't mean to repeat this point, but um, I don't think it has to have the relationship with Honor Majesties to still be effective, and because Honor Majesties is Honor Majesties, and it works in its own way very well. And in the course of the series, we do I have there are those films that I in my head I always think are the Honor Majesties type of films. They have that, they follow that storyline in a sense. So I always think in my head the next film in the Honor Majesty's timeline, so to speak, kind of, you could say there are references made to marriage in other films like Live and Let Die, but I think the next direct reference is made in The Spy Who Loved Me, in fact, and then from there For Your Eyes Only, and then from there, um, uh, License to Kill, and so that's the kind of On Her Majesty's universe that exists in my head. And so in that sense, I don't need Diamonds Are Forever to be a direct sequel to On Her Majesty's, because I'm very satisfied with the rest of the series. And that's why I said in the very beginning that if you don't like Diamonds, that's okay, because there are plenty of other films in the series that I think can satiate one's needs in terms of James Bond entertainment. So yeah, so there is that. And incidentally, of course, there are some interesting, one could say, connections with the Honor Majesty's universe, which will lead also to some interesting connections with other what I call the Honor Majesty's films. And so, for example, there are references made to marriage, diamonds, where Moneypenny says, Bond asks for what anything that he can get for her, and he says, diamond in a ring. Would you sell it? Would you settle for a tulip? Yes. And it goes into that great John Barry rendition of the James Bond theme. I call it the hovercraft theme because it's the it's that use of the horns that is very suggestive. It's the only time that's used in that way in this film, so it's the hovercraft scene. So I call it the James Bond hovercraft version. But uh, that little thing about Moneypenny and asking for a diamond, which is suggestive of marriage, you could take it as a subtle hint of Honor Majesties, but the fact that they're so jokey and very lighthearted about it means that it's its own moment. It's a Sean Connery, Lois Maxwell moment rather than an Honor Majesty's moment. Although we can make that comparison. Another interesting little detail like that is when they're in the car. Tiffany Case and Bond are in the car in Las Vegas, and cops are chasing them, and oh yeah, right on. Don't worry, or not before the cops chase them. He says, "Oh, I have a friend named Felix who can fix anything." And then Tiffany Case says, in jest, she says, "Oh, is he married?" And I thought that was very interesting because whenever I think of that line, it reminds me of course, what happens in a film that we will see later, which is License to Kill, right? And Felix Leiter and marriage and what happens to that. And so that's interesting. It also leads me to wonder, oh, it would have been so interesting if Felix Leiter had decided at the end to marry Tiffany Case and what that would have happened. Oh, that would have been interesting. But oh well, oh well. C'est la vie, as it were, right? In love and life. So anyway, I'll just go on here. Let's see. All right. Excuse me. Oh, Alan is here. Alan, my dear friend Alan. Our dear friend Alan. How are you, my friend? I hope you're well. Let's see. Henoch says Shirley Bassey's singing in is so beyond description that you kind of get swept in there. Yes, I agree. Um, yes. Oops. Something happened here. What happened? What happened here? Let me now. Excuse me. We're having a bit of technical difficulty, but things will be resolved shortly. My computer has now turned off rather abruptly, so I don't quite know what's going on there. So give me one moment to readjust. And, oh, here, it's back on again. Here we go. Sorry about this. I suppose that's the nature of technology. Sometimes it just goes out on you like this, right? And perhaps that was the downfall of Blofeld too, which is maybe he was relying too much on technology. Well, he should have just done it the old-fashioned way. But anyway, hold on. So my computer, oops. Interesting. Okay, so my computer is now, for some reason, restarting. So I have lost the chat. So I apologize. So I will now just continue on with my comments. And as my computer reboots, I'll try to get back into the chat. So I've lost my place. So please continue on with the chat. And I will try to re-enter it as soon as I can. So my dear friends, cover for me while I continue on here, and I will join you momentarily. But in the meantime, there's another thing I wanted to say, which is I did speak about the I did speak about um I did speak about uh the John Barry score. And there are moments here that I alluded to as examples of why I think the score is fantastic. It's one of the best scores in my opinion. I know maybe it feels a little bit off here and there for some people. I get that, but for me overall, it's one of the great scores because it is it's very much, it has that Las Vegas feel. There are moments which it feels decadent, and it feels very much I mean this very, very positively, but it feels decadent and um, artificial, which I think is important. There is also the way that the it has a distinct feel from what came before it, which is On Her Majesty's. And don't get me wrong, I think On Her Majesty's is one of the best John Barry scores, period. But I like this distinct nature to it. It has its own flavor. For example, the use of the blah, 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 sound for the hovercraft theme, and then you have the way that jumps are used in the music, like da, that wonderful John Barry chord, the da chord. And there's one of my favorite moments too is when uh, uh, Bond is peeling off the fingerprint thing, and he's talking to Q on the phone. It just and then Q says, "Oh, by the way, that fellow Peter Franks, he escaped. He killed one of the guards." Bond, and it cuts to Bond, and then it not cuts to Bond, cuts to the hotel room that Bond and bah, and no one's there, so it's like empty hotel room, duh. Oh, it's great stuff, and then only John Barry could make an empty hotel room seem really that exciting. Great stuff. But incidentally, why would it be Q that would tell Bond this really important information that the guy that they apprehended in order to maintain Bond's cover has escaped? You'd think that it would be M or something, but no, it's, oh, by the way, it's me, Q, and let me tell you this really important information that I seen probably no one else has told you about, right? I don't know. Is it MI6's fault, or is it Bond's fault? Maybe Bond was on the job too much. I mean, he is in Las Vegas after all, but not in Las Vegas. No, it's not even in Las Vegas, right? He's in Amsterdam still. So yeah. So why wouldn't it have been M or someone to inform Bond that Peter Franks has escaped? That makes no sense to me. But anyway, what was it? Yeah, John Barry and the way that his music makes even an empty hotel room so exciting is just amazing stuff. So, um, the music is one of the strengths of any Bond film, and this music is really great for me. It's and the triumphant use of the 007 theme at the very end with the destruction of the oil rig, Baja, and this is to me a great theme because it has that adventure type of, it's almost like a western type of theme, and it's very positive and very jovial and very light on its feet, and that's exactly, it's light on its feet like Tiffany Case is light on her feet when she's firing the machine gun. And I love that too. There's this way that almost I never thought about it until now, but Tiffany Case, she's firing the machine gun, it's really silly, right? And she's scared, but right, it's, she's never handled a machine gun, I've never handled a machine gun, so perhaps she's handling a machine gun better than I probably would handle a machine gun, right? And it makes loud noises, and it's just very scary, right? But she's doing the best she can because James Bond just shoot him, right? And it's just, she's doing that thing, and then it drives her back little by little, and then she falls over the edge, I guess, and she survives, thank goodness. But because I could assume that would be a really high fall, very dangerous. In fact, she could have killed herself. But I mean, if Blofeld says, if that whole that the space of this much distance and the crashing of the Batho sub onto the surface of the water could have killed him, I could definitely assume that this kind of movement that knocks Tiffany Case over the side there could have really killed her. In fact, but she was very strong to not have sustained any injury apparently, which is great. But um, okay, so okay, I'm back. Here we go. So, but what was I saying? So yes, so the but I love that moment because the music is like in perfect unison with the, you know, and that's very much like a musical way of expressing the patter, the pitter patter of the feet as it goes, as it forces Tiffany Case over the side there. So I think that's a little subtle, excellent point of the music. And so, um, let's see here. So yeah, so I thought that 007 theme was excellent, absolutely excellent. Um, and also, it's not about the theme, but afterwards, talk about, you know, that James Bond, he's one heck of a diver, is he not? Right? He can dive off that thing like no one's business. Really great. And he did something right. If I please correct me if I'm wrong, but he also did a very similar dive. James Bond did in Doctor No. So Doctor No and Diamonds Are Forever. This is interesting. So the first Sean Connery film and the last of the Eon Bonds Sean Connery films. So they're bookended by a diving Bond scene. So that's interesting. Did he do any similar dives like that in You Only Live Twice? I don't think so. I mean, not from a great height, I think. But anyway, um, yeah, so that's pretty impressive stuff. But so there's, so a lot has been made about that you can use a lot of ways to categorize Bond films, like the Bond films that have ski chases. So the ski chase Bond films, or the Tom Mankiewicz Guy Hamilton Bond films, which this is of course one of. Also, in my head, you can also maybe categorize the James Bond diving film. So this and Doctor No, I think, would be up there. Also, the circus, the James Bond circus films, and so this has a scene in the circus, uh, right? Uh, right, there's this, sometimes people think that the Nairobi South Africa thing is a mistake, but it's just a part of the it's part of the circus act of the thing. It's all about it's just the act, right? So but this and Moonraker to a certain extent, but also Octopussy form the circus Bond films. Could you include the Man with the Golden Gun in that? I mean, there is a circus motif, of course, in terms of Scaramanga, but I don't think there's any scene necessarily in a circus. So I would probably put a little asterisk by the Man with the Golden Gun, maybe not included in the circus motif James Bond films. But in any event, my friends, I am just getting ahead of myself here. I'm just getting carried away. So anyway, let me go back to the chat because now I have returned. So I can't go to the very top, unfortunately, but I can go to. Oh, here we go. Okay, let me now go to. Um, okay, so I'm sorry for my computer. Suddenly shut down automatically and I rebooted, so I can't go to the top of the chat. So if I missed your comment, I apologize. But I can now go to the chat where I see Wolfgratz, my dear friend Wolfgratz. Um, let's see, talking about your they also killed the wrong Tiffany. So I think you're referring to the whole bit with the pool and Plenty O'Toole. Talk about Plenty O'Toole and pools. I mean, the first pool that she encountered in the film, it was very lucky. And then the second pool that she encountered that we see is very unfortunate and quite tragic and deadly. So um, it's pretty. That was actually a pretty chilling scene, the discovery of Plenty O'Toole in the pool. But uh, yeah, yeah, you know what are they doing in as far as their killing process is, which is interesting too. Wint and Kidd, what is it? What do they do, and how are they interacting with their victims, right? Because they apparently they have never met Dr. Tynan before because Dr. Tynan doesn't recognize them, and the helicopter pilot in that early scene doesn't recognize them either. Mrs. Whistler recognizes them. Oh, how nice to see you again, she says. And so, where is it this time? You know, Amsterdam. Oh, you know, I should like to bring up some pictures for the children, right? And Potter Smith with his Nikon camera, right? But but why do Wint and Kidd know Mrs. Whistler? But they didn't know any of the other people. So that's an interesting thing. I'm not sure. Maybe it was part of the setup to get to know that part of the smuggling chain. I don't know. But the point is that I think in general, aside from the exception of, say, the case of Mrs. Whistler, Winton Kid didn't know or they weren't acquainted with their victims. So maybe that is explaining the fact that they didn't know that Plenty O'Toole, if we could assume, if we assume that it was Winton Kidd who was responsible for the death of Plenty O'Toole as part of this operation of covering up the smuggling chain by killing every part of the link, then it was Winton Kidd who killed Plenty O'Toole. Maybe it was they didn't know that it was Tiffany Case because they just didn't know. It's the same thing with Bond and Peter Franks, right? They have Peter Franks there, but they didn't know that was Bond, even though they work for Blofeld. But just because they see Sean Connery as Peter Franks doesn't mean that it's automatic that Blofeld sees what they see. So it's not like that monster, that eyeball monster in Big Trouble in Little China, right? But the point is that they didn't realize who Peter Franks was. They didn't realize, therefore, who Dr. Tynan was, and so we can assume that they didn't know immediately who Tiffany Case was. Although you'd think that they would have a case file, case file, but they would have a file of some sort. But anyway. Let's see. But good point, Wolfgratz. Good point. Um, And then you say, but perhaps all attractive women look the same to them. But right, but um, they were able to recognize. Huh? That's interesting. They were able to recognize Tiffany Case. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait. Let's think about this. Um, Wait. This is interesting. This is really weird. Actually, I take that back because actually they recognized Tiffany Case on the plane, right? From Amsterdam to Las Vegas, right? And Plenty O'Toole was killed in Las Vegas. So actually I take the whole thing back. So they should have known Tiffany Case because they identified Tiffany Case on the plane, right? Because it was Mr. Kidd who said, they're both on board. I must say, um, Miss Case is quite attractive for a lady, right? And there's an exchange between the two of them, Wynton Kidd. So, but actually, no, I take that back. So they should have known who Tiffany Case was because they recognized her on the plane, right? If that's the case, then how did they mistake Plenty O'Toole? Oh my goodness, that means that perhaps they didn't. Okay, so then if we carry this through, then that means that they didn't. They knew who Tiffany Case was, and still they killed Plenty O'Toole anyway. Oh, that makes them even more sadistic and psychopathic, right? So, okay, all right. Thank you very much for that clarification. Thank you. Um, so I take back everything except those last few comments that I made. So thank you very much for that opportunity to clarify and to clear up thy own confusion. So thank you. Um, let's see. Um, just scrolling down here. Wolfgrat says, incidentally, I like the rat, a more realistic actor than the pigeon the other week. You're referring to Moonraker. Yes. It did run away, too, in a very realistic fashion when that whole machine electric shock apparatus was coming down the track there. So, yeah, very good point. Um, and Erwin says, "Yeah, it really looked more like a mouse to me." That's great. Maybe actually, that's a good way. Is it a rat or a mouse? Actually, was it a mouse? Perhaps I'm not sure, but anyway. Um, yes, Cooper Glover says, the guy who played Putter Smith is the guy who played Putter is the guy who played Kid is Putter Smith." Yes, and let's see, that's exactly right, Cooper Glover. Exactly. Um, Yeah, Erwin says, I love the look on Glover's face when Wint realizes his partner died. Yes, at the very end with the burning. He has and he's like he looks a little bit. He looks over to the side a little bit, and then you see from there he's even more motivated to want to just like throttle Bond at that. You're absolutely right. Yeah, and then there is and of course leads to that moment of the bomb and the whole thing. Well, how are you going to destroy? How are you going to off this villain at this point? Well, okay, we'll have the bomb. Well, how are you going to apply the bomb? Well, let's apply the bomb with the arms and through the legs, and talk about another great look, facial look. That little look. There's a little moment where Bruce Glover shows almost a little bit of happiness when he's got the that moment, right? And then just whoa, it goes that thing there. So that's one of the more memorable ways to dispatch a villain, I suppose, in a Bond film, and it leads to I mean, you have that moment which is so like just what the heck did I just see? What no seriously, what the heck did I just see with that that death? That's really out there stuff, and it's the way to finish the film. And so you watch this, what did I just see? And you think, wow, how can Tom Mankiewicz's pen and people and crew, how can they, what one liner will they give to us? It must be this really bawdy, uh overly intense sexual innuendo type of thing, right? Because and oh no, oh there you caught there he has his hands between his legs, and so wow, that's pretty innocent stuff, right? It's great. It's a very innocent way to end what could have otherwise been a really overly sexualized type of one-liner. But okay, that's fun. I mean, I guess it's maybe left to us and and our imaginations as to how it could have ended. But anyway, that is a pretty memorable demise, if I do say so myself. Um, Yeah, so talk about looks on faces. That's another great one. Um, and yeah, so anyway, um, yeah, bitten by the bug. Yes. Um, let's see. Um, when Wint and Kid go down the tunnel of the white building and they drive down the tunnel, the rock they come out of kind of looks cheap. So you're talking about the thing, it opens up like this and it goes, lets them escape, drive out into the desert. Yeah, okay. All right. Um, it might look maybe the sun, I don't know, but I know it was dark that time. But the Batcave moment, yeah, as Erwin says. Let's see. Yeah, Wolfgret says, just shoot him, guys. Yeah, they never ever listen to, yeah. uh, did Winton Kid murder the elderly woman who, in the canals in Yeah, the assumption is that they did. Yes, um, because we see a picture of them really coldly talking about. She did want to have pictures taken for the children. The children would be so thrilled. Ah, that's really cold. That is really cold stuff. And yeah, Wolfrat's, the little old lady motif in Guy Hamilton films. Um, we and you're making reference to the little old lady that we saw in Goldfinger. Really memorable moment in that film. I think that could be we'll talk about it in Goldfinger. That probably is that could be my favorite moment in Goldfinger. In fact, it's a great film. I love that film. So many great moments. That little old lady scene in Goldfinger is probably my favorite moment in that film. But let's see. Okay. All right. Um, yeah, Hennock. Let's see. Cooper Glover, Wolf Gratz. Hennock talking about Burt Reynolds. Yeah. Erwin says Lazenby's Australian. Yeah, that's a good point. I think, yeah, the point that I was making also was about the idea of I think it was it. Wait, could Bond be American? Right, because that's I think the jump that I think could work, but I understand how it might not be consistent or might not be seen to be consistent with the quote unquote British depiction of Bond. Although you're absolutely right, all of you, that right, we have Australian actor, Welsh actor, Scottish actor, Irish, right? So anyway, so very interesting stuff. Um, right, so scrolling down. Um, okay, sorry, just scrolling down the, the chat here. Let's see. All right. Yeah, Wolfgratz and Cooper Glover talking about the opening and the uh, the possible references made that could be made with Honor Majesties. So I think it could go either way. Actually, in other words, you could look at it as Honor Majesty's references, which I think a lot of people do. I certainly do. But also, you could look at it as standing on its own. Um, you know, uh, Connery is back type of thing. Let's see. Erwin says, when I went from Holland to UK by water, we took the ferry. Oh, that's interesting. I've never taken that trip, so that's interesting. Very good. Oh, damn fool! Idealistic Crusaders here. Hello, it's nice to see you. Good. I'm glad you could join us. Um, I know you're busy, so thank you, my friend. Um, okay, let's see. Oh, Erwin says after stuff falling before, maybe it's poltergeist and dice. So yeah, that's reference to a sound that was made. I think it was maybe the poltergeist saying that oh, he really likes diamonds are forever. So let's see. Um, let's see. Yeah, Damn Fool says that the Diamonds Are Forever score is the last in the traditional run of the immortal Barry's score run because when he came back, he was already transitioning into his strong style. It has jazzier style to best reflect the slinky, satirical Bob's and Sean being back. Um, I love the circus theme. Circus, circus. Yeah. Da, 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 da. And I love the moment where you have the twirling acrobats, or not acrobats, but the twirling aerial artists, I suppose. And then you see Bond and Felix Leiter just like oh my. Anyway, um, and the great John Barry score, da, 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 and then it goes from there to Tiffany Case being followed and stuff, and then she was able to lose them, right? She's able to lose this whole essentially this whole group of CIA agents, which is really impressive. Actually, Tiffany Case is very impressive here. So I know lots mention about Tiffany Case now. She's this maybe not so such a maybe in the grand scheme of things, maybe not so effective. I thought she was really very much uh, very strong, and she turns. I mean, there's that whole bit at the end where, oh, she's in a bikini and she took the tape out that she didn't take. I mean, if you look at the situation, right, it wouldn't. I mean, I can totally understand how she could totally not get how Bond already switched the tapes, and then maybe she very, I think, understandably misunderstood the signal that Bond gave to her about the tape, and so she did her best, and in fact, she was able to switch the tape too, right? She says, "I switched the tape out." Oh, and what does he say? He says, "Oh, you stupid twit, you put the real tape back in," or something like that, right? And so, but she was able to switch the tape, right, without anyone noticing, which I think is very impressive. So even in this moment where she might seem to be a bit of what maybe ineffective, I suppose, she is very effective, and then she shows us a lot of intelligence. Right, she's the one who notices Blofeld leaving not Blofeld. She notices the woman and the cat, and she, I guess, puts two and two together that this is probably Blofeld escaping, and so she's the one who goes after Blofeld when and in the White House there in the casino as he's leaving, and then it's she who is able to think on her feet really quickly and drive across and stop Metz from driving from the gas station to give Bond just enough time to get into the van. And to know, hey Curly, where are my stamps? And has all that. I thought that was great. And she uses she attempts to use um her sex appeal, not as a weapon per se, but as a means of trying to get information and as a means of trying to further herself and her own plans. When she thinks it's still Peter Franks, she tries to use that in order to get the real diamonds. And then when she then realizes that it's James Bond, she tries to use her feminine wiles in order to get to be on the good graces with Bond and Felix Leiter, so as to avoid going to jail. And so I think that's a very understandable position to be in. She has to, in a sense, protect herself with with what she has, and so and I find therefore her character to be a really fascinating one, and it's one where she knows what she needs to do with the whole thing with the fingerprints at the very beginning, and there's that whole little odd detail about the hair and the wigs that she uses, and it leads, of course, to a very famous line about collars and cuffs, of course. But the point is that she understands the need to have to create a sense of confusion about her appearance. Lest this is not Peter Franks. And of course, eventually it doesn't turn out to be Peter Franks, of course, but still, that's just, I think Tiffany Case is really, really interesting character. And I don't know, I don't know if Tiffany Case is given as much credit as I think she deserves in the grand, say, pantheon of of um, the heroines of James Bond. But I think she's really strong, and she doesn't. I mean, okay, the machine gun thing at the very end, that looks a little bit silly, out of context. But as I was trying to suggest earlier, right? I mean, has she ever handled a machine gun before? Probably not, right? And if you're, it's very difficult to handle this really, in a sense, a very overwhelming piece of equipment for the first time in this panicked situation. So I can totally understand that, and it's and she was able to survive the fall too. So that is very suggestive of maybe some kind of physical capability of being able to handle herself. So whatever the case may be, right? Tiffany case, well done, well done. And let's see. All right, just going on here. Um, Erwin says the musical moment when Bond hangs in the air with the strip in the background, awesome. Yes, and the background too. That's an amazing effect. That oh, what, you're absolutely Timothy. Hello. All the Sean Connery films are very good. Yes. Um, let's see. Damn Fool says makes you miss the guy struggling to load tons of missiles into the hood of the Aston DBS. Yes, yes. Um, yes, yeah, some random guard gets killed, which is bad luck, but it did make the guy seem more dangerous. And I loved that fight by. That's a good point. Yes, that's no, you're absolutely right. So they killed the guard. No, so you're absolutely right. So my point though is why is it Q that's letting Bond know? But you're right. It's all about the equipping of the car. I suppose that's never used in the film. So it's like the golden eye thing, the golden eye syndrome. Anyway, Doctor 13. Hello. Yes. Um, Bond was out of contact, so Q is relaying what M had tried to relay if Bond had ended. Yes, although, right, damn fool, it's interesting. Oh, yeah, it's I've got to hand it to Q, right, right about the whole thing. But it's oh, by the way, that guy Peter Franks, oh, he escaped. It wasn't like the first. It wasn't like the first thing that they talked about. It was like the afterthought. So if it was really M's orders to Q to relay the information. It was like an afterthought. So that's why I make the joke as I did. Um, yeah. Uh, yes, and Bruce Cabot. Yes. Bert Saxby. Yeah. Bert Saxby. Right. Tell him he's fired. That's a great moment. Yeah, but it's what a great presence. Yeah, Bert Saxby. It's kind of one of the unsung heroes of Diamonds Are Forever, in my opinion, because I think Bert Saxby is actually one of the key villains in the piece, and so it's great. And I love the moment where he says, Mr. Frank's credit's good. Good luck to you, Mr. Franks. I love that moment. Let's see. Um, Yeah, Cooper Clever says maybe Jill St. John didn't mind how her character was portrayed as a bimbo, but I sort of don't like how her character is treated. Yeah, I just now tried to make the case for Tiffany Case. So, um, let's see. Wolfgrat says he died. Yes, he dived, and also he had a tunnel in Doctor Nolan. Yeah, so tunnel. Thank you. So the tunnel bonds and the dive bonds. Okay, very good. Well, good observation, Wolfgrat. Thanks for reminding me. And so the yeah, so that's really great. Are there any other bonds where he's talking to animals? Because he talks to I guess it's what is it? It's a rat or a mouse here. He has a little moment in Octopussy, I think, where he's talking to a tiger. And are there any other moments where he's talking to animals? I'm not sure, but anyway. Let's see. Uh, Sorry about this. Again. All right. Again, my computer is not acting in the way that I would like, so it's just there's a little bit of a skip. Here we go. Okay, now I'm back to where I was. The outfits on those circus workers is ridiculous. um, and one of my that sequence is really interesting. One of my another moment I really like is when at the card table, the dealer gives Tiffany Case the card. Why don't you play the water balloons? I love the moment where she looks up like that. I love that's there's something very charming about Jill St. John in particular at that moment. Great stuff. Um, let's see. Yes, Wolfgang said, I did feel bad for Lana. Actually, though, her acting wasn't a high point for you. You're talking about Plenty O'Toole. Yeah, I mean, it's Plenty O'Toole is a very, I think, interesting and memorable character, but she's not there for very long. And so, but I think for the time that she's there, I think she makes quite an impression. And yeah, so it would have been nice to see a little bit more of her. I know that maybe some of you know that there were some other scenes or other footage that was cut out that would have had more, well, a little bit more of her appear in the scenes and would have given a little bit more context as to how she ended up where she did uh, in future scenes. So, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Wolfgrat says they saw Tiff in the plane. So this is the moment where I was talking about Wint and Kid and how they actually knew Tiffany Case. So yeah, going into the details of the plot is such a rabbit hole, says Rowan. Although I don't, I mean, I don't think so. I think once one gets I think it's, I don't know. It's probably not the most easy to follow at first, but I think there is a logic to the scenes, and there is a way to explain them logically, I think. And that's the thing too about the writing, and in particular, we have to remember this is the first time that we're getting Tom Mankiewicz's contribution. And one of the great strengths, I think, he's got many great strengths, but one of the great strengths about Tom Mankiewicz, the combination of Guy Hamilton and Tom Mankiewicz, that we will see, or that we saw in our discussion of Live and Let Die, and that we will later see in a film like in the film The Man with the Golden Gun. One of the great strengths is how they, not just the one liners, which I think is really fantastic, but also how they deliver information to the audience and to us the viewer, because they are able, I think, to show us so much with just a little bit, to give us just enough and then rely on us to try to put the pieces together. Case in point, their treatment of Professor Dr. Metz. This is really fascinating. They took the time to make the point, not directly, but indirectly through discussions between Willard White and Bond, about how Metz is this advocate for world peace. So how did how in the heck did Blofeld get his hooks in him? I will never know, right? Says Willard White. So and then it's explained in a kind of throwaway line type of fashion when Blofeld and Metz are seen on the oil rig and their discussion in the control center about how it would seem, therefore, that Blofeld tricked Metz into working with him because Blofeld pretended that he was also an advocate for peace. And we understand that he probably isn't. So, excuse me here. Oops. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. So, uh, so that is an interesting development, and it didn't need to happen. It could have been very easy for the filmmakers concerned just to have Dr. Metz as being another maybe villain, a doctor villain. But no, they took the time to set up this little thing, this little kernel that was in a sense set up in a throwaway fashion, and then they fulfill it in another seemingly throwaway fashion. But I love that. I love how they give us the clues in order to be able to put it together. And it doesn't need to be put together. We don't need that information in order to be able to, in a sense, go along with the plot. But if we want to see what those details are, I think the film and Guy Hamilton and excuse me, Tom Mankiewicz, I think they present the information just enough for us to be able to put the pieces together if we want to. And we don't have to, because it is still a Bond film, and so we can kind of go along with what's going on. Still, um, excuse me. um, I love those. I love that way of presenting, and that's why I love this era of Bond films. You know, the Guy Hamilton, Tom Mankiewicz era, and it for a lot of people, I think it reaches its heights really much with the film to follow, which is Live and Let Die, which is really where a lot of the creative juices are flowing in that regard. But it has its start here, a very triumphant start here with Diamonds, and I think it works very well. Um, and I love how their concern is not it seems like their concern is more about it's about like setup and release of a particular situation. And I love, therefore it seems like these are like segments that are put together, and so they are segments, but they are constructed really well. And of course they are not unrelated, but I love how each segment seems to work quite well. And I think the cleverness of the construction that's provided by the the very witty dialogue, and also the over the top way that certain setups are released. I think that's what makes the overall Hamilton Mankiewicz package sparkle so glitteringly, like a diamond, as it were, that it does in this film, at least in my opinion, and I think in the opinion of many others. But as I say, going back to my original comments, if you don't like this film, that's okay too. That's absolutely fine, because, as I say, there are other films outside of the Guy Hamilton Mankiewicz canon that you can certainly watch and enjoy, for sure, for definitely. So, um, let's see here. Excuse me. So let's see. Um, excuse me. My excuse me. I'm sorry. My I think I'm because if I go on for an extended time to speak, my throat becomes a bit dry. So I apologize for that. So let me just go to the chat while I drink something. Okay. Let's see. Henok says, "Lan." Oops. Okay. Where was I? Okay. Um, Hanok says Lana and Jill St. John, they are not so exceptionally stunning by any means, but they're blames. Oh, really? Oh, I thought they're very I thought they're very charming in their own respective ways. But but that's okay. I can understand your comment. Not a problem at all. Um, Wolfgat says, "Well, I never thought it was a good idea to kill the smellers in the first place." I don't know. I mean, the whole point of, at least my understanding of the plot, was that everything needed to be done in a clandestine manner in order to avoid suspicion, which is a good thing. Although, of course, the idea of murder, several murders in South Africa have complicated things, as M says in the beginning. So I think you're onto something, Wolfgratz, when you say that it probably wasn't a good idea, because it actually it puts them on the trail, and it makes them and Sir Donald want to investigate more what's happening. So maybe that wasn't a good idea. And in fact, it's pretty antithetical to the whole, like, why would they want to kill the whole smugglers one chain at a time, but they'd want to keep Willard White alive, right? But maybe Willard White was in a different situation, and so maybe they saw the need to keep him alive in order to maybe if something came up, etc. The smuggling operation, though, it probably would have been better in the long run to have them all be alive, because right, it wouldn't have hurt anyone, but the fact that they were killed, right, brought attention to the situation, maybe. So it's one of these things where which has the higher risk, and the risk analysis that Blofeld and company probably undertook was that it was probably a higher risk for them to keep them alive rather than to have things the way they were. Although perhaps we realized that maybe in the end that risk analysis was in some capacity flawed, because it didn't turn out the way they probably would have liked. I'm talking about Blofeld and Saxby and all the rest, and Metz. Let's see. um, let's see. Um, Yeah, Erwin says, I think with confusing Plenty and Tiffany, maybe the wigs of Tiffany come into play. Yeah, that's a really good point about the pool. Yeah, and she actually does make a whole thing about, what's my wig doing in the pool, uh, and then she realizes it's a body. So talking about the mouse in the tunnel and Bond stopped the machine. Yeah, yeah. Although Bond refers to it as a rat, right? He says, I was just walking my rat and I seem to have lost my way. So he refers to it. He refers to a rat. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's referring to what he was right in the tunnel. That doesn't mean that that is a rat. But um, I don't know. But anyway, let's see. Yeah, thank you, Damful. I was just out walking my rat and seem to have lost my way. Yes, let's see. Um, Oh yes, and Wolfgratz makes mention of the of Bambi and Thumper, which is interesting. Yeah, that's another interesting fight. A lot's been, I think, a lot. No, maybe not a lot, but a lot's been. Well, yeah, some comments have been made. I think about the Bambi and Thumper exchange, and they obviously are very strong. And I like. Um, the whole and actually it takes a lot of physical capability and skill in order to do what it is they're able to do in terms of acrobatics and fighting, which is very effective. And I don't know if Bond in that moment is physically threatened by them, or he's just what's the phrase, he's still okay just going along with the fight, because at the end of course he is able to overcome them rather easily in the pool. So it begs all sorts of questions, I think, but I consider them to be very formidable opponents physically, with a lot of skill. And also especially Thumper, she seems to be she seems to like to show off too, which is show off her physicality moves, which I think it's very valid, and she does a lot of really great physical things. She talks about a little twirl on the floor, which actually is really difficult, really difficult to achieve, and she does it with the turn of the head in a very dance-like move. Great stuff, and shows great flexibility and prowess, as does Bambi as well. But I think their mistake, of course, strategically, was getting in the pool. After they had Bond in the pool, that's where they should have left him. But no, no, no. They went in the pool with Bond. They dove in the pool. Maybe they, what does Luke Skywalker say to the Emperor? Your overconfidence is your weakness. And I think they were a little bit too overconfident at that moment, and so they didn't have to go into the pool. But that was their mistake, right? Because once they are in the pool with Bond, then their advantage wears off, right? Because all things become equal in water, right? What is it? It's what was that film? Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan had that whole thing with the Mutara Nebula, and the whole thing, the idea of the Mutara Nebula was what does Spock say? Sauce for the goose, Savick. The odds will be even, and so that's what happens eventually. The swimming pool in the summer house of Willard White. And the fight between Bambi and Thumper and Bond, the swimming pool becomes their Mutara Nebula, and it becomes the thing where all the odds will be even, unfortunately. So they evened out the odds, which allowed Bond to essentially overcome them. If we go along with the theory that Bond was actually really physically overcome by them at the first half of their battle. But anyway, um, uh, and then I love how Thumper's just really quickly like, yeah, down, it's down there with her. So she doesn't hesitate. So she knows what's going on. She better let them know. Otherwise, she probably knows that she's in a lot more trouble with the authorities. And also, this is another scene where we have the great run, the great two step of our Felix Leiter here, and it's another great scene to show how the way that Felix Leiter, the pitter patter move, walk or run of Felix Leiter is really great. I love it. So. It's added, given more force with the John Barry score. Da 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 da. It's great stuff. Um, let's see. Okay, okay. Let's see. Just scrolling down. scrolling down the um, the chat here. Yeah, Wolfrat says, well, Bond does call Tiffany a twit. I think he says, you stupid twit, which is even worse, actually. But as I was trying to argue before, I think the opposite is true because of the mere fact that she was able to switch out the tapes so skillfully and without getting caught. So, anyway, let's see. She did get caught the second time when she was trying to switch it back in, but the first time she didn't get caught. So, Ryan Harding is here. Hello. So part of the reason the ending is so anticlimactic is because a good chunk of the budget was taken up by Connery's $1.25 million salary. I think also it also is in many ways very much a characteristic of the artistically of the Guy Hamilton Tom Mankiewicz era. So the three films Diamonds, Live and Let Die, and Golden Gun. So if you think about the way, and I don't want to talk too much about Golden Gun, we haven't spoken about that in the live stream yet. But if you think about the other formats, there isn't this. Well, I guess in there's some, yeah, maybe Live and Let Die. There's an argument to say that there is more of a climactic sense to that film. But I think the opposite argument could be made, which is that it's very much more quote unquote a low key affair with the interaction between Bond and the main villain. And then there is a follow through, or there's a follow up epilogue at the end with the fight with the hench person. And so I think we get that kind of pattern here with Diamonds, although, as I say, I do acknowledge that it is slightly different because it could be argued that there was probably more of a climactic sense of a duel between the villains and the hero, Bond and the villain in Kananga and Live and Let Die, and then Scaramanga and the Man with the Golden Gun. Then here, Bond versus Blofeld. But still, there is to the extent that there is a kind of climax, there is this explosion and all this chaos going on, and the villain's plans are thwarted, right? So we don't see what happens to Metz, right? I guess what right. So Metz, the control room explodes, and so we assume that the countdown guy, you know, the poor countdown guy, he gets it at the end, right? Because of the explosion of the room, because he's still there while everyone is maybe escaping, he's still there, like really still counting down, even as the thing rams into the thing and everything explodes. So he probably dies at the end too, right? Does Metz die? I don't know, but that countdown guy probably gets it. If so, that guy showed a lot of guts, right? He was there to the very end, and he did his job. His job was to make sure the countdown was announced accordingly. Good job for the countdown guy, right? And there's a moment when he says, what is it, 1 minute and counting. When he says 5 minutes, just notice how the inflection of his voice has changed ever so slightly. He doesn't say 5 minutes and counting. He says 5 minutes and counting. So there's a little bit of a counting when he says 5 minutes. So that's very interesting. But good for that guy for staying there to the very end. He showed a lot of loyalty to Blofeld, even where Blofeld didn't show any loyalty to him because he was ready to hightail it out of there with his really effective looking batho sub. So, incidentally, how is that batho sub powered? By the way, it seems so small. I don't know where its source of energy comes because it has little holes in the back. But where do those where does those holes connect? I don't know. Is it on the sides? If so, it doesn't. It doesn't seem to be an effect. There doesn't seem to be any room for any kind of motor or motor mechanism. But anyway. But it didn't matter because he didn't get a chance to use it. So anyway, Jonah V, good day, Daisuke. Hopefully you've had a wonderful day. Greetings from Belgium. Oh, greetings. Yes, it is now. I've been. I was starting this 6 a.m. Tokyo time, so it's now about 8:40. So I've been here for about 2 hours and 40 minutes. But afterwards, yes, the day will start in earnest. So thank you very much for your kind greetings. I appreciate it. Yes, Ryan says originally Bond was supposed to fight Blofeld on a salt mine after the oil rig blows up. I think it would have been. I think it actually works better without a fight, a physical fight between Blofeld and Bond. Actually, because of the fact that Charles Gray. I always say Charles Dance when I talk about Charles Gray. Charles Gray. When Charles Gray um, uh, fights him at the beginning, there doesn't seem to be much of a threat, right? Because he does the thing with the knife, and Bond does blah with the light. Like don't look at my stuntman face as he goes into the bubbling pit there. But what was I saying? So I actually think it works better this way in terms of Charles Gray's Blofeld, that there isn't any physical fight between the two of them, because it would just that I think that probably would have been more of an anticlimax, to be perfectly honest, than what we got in this, which is still arguably an anticlimax, but still, it's certainly not. It would have been better to have, if there was going to be a physical fight between Bond and Blofeld. I would have liked to have seen the physical fight between Bond and Telly Savalas's Blofeld, which we got a little hint of course, in the previous film, but it would have been nice to see an all-out fight between those two. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, I suppose. But a good point, though, Ryan. Um, let's see. Scrolling down here in the interest of time. Great chat, by the way. Um, As Arthur says, well, in reality, diamond laser weapons don't exist. I don't. Yeah, I'm not an expert in laser weapons or diamonds, so let's see. I wouldn't know. Um, Scrolling down. Yeah, Wolfgrat says at least Saxby does his own dirty work, the fool. Yeah, it was his end. I mean, and it was a little bit odd if you think about it, because Bert Saxby was trying to shoot from a low angle up on high, which is actually maybe. I mean, I'm not a sniper, but I would think that that probably is there's a height disadvantage. You'd probably want to be from a higher vantage point, or at least a higher vantage point than where he was. But at the same time, it was probably the only chance that he got, because that was the point where Willard White escaped from his room after what we assume to be years inside, and you actually see that moment where he's outside, he's enjoying the sunshine, which is why he's standing there, and that, like, so actually Bert Saxby should have. It would have been a really clean target, but maybe the fact that he missed suggestive of the fact that maybe Bert Saxby wasn't a good shot to begin with. But anyway, um, speaking of which, before I should mention a few words about Willard White. What a character he is! I mean, he doesn't appear for most of the film. He appears actually in a very small chunk of the running time, but he's part of the. He's almost like it's like he's almost like the Goldfinger uh, type of thing. Everyone seems to talk about him, but he's not there. Although Goldfinger is there for a lot of that film, but my point is that a lot of people talk about him, and so he only appears later, and then he becomes um, this character played by Jimmy Dean, and I love the documentary and how he's talking about the you know thank goodness for the sausage business, right? It's great. Every day's Groundhog Day. Did you know that, or something like that? But um, uh, what was I saying? So yeah, so Willard White. Thank you. Willard White is a wonderful character, and there's some really interesting thing about how he's very smart. He's got this science background. And he knows his empire, and he's got all the details down. There's also this connection between Willard White and toilets. There's all this. There's actually, I think, at least three references made to toilets and Willard White. There's the whole thing about the toilet in the Willard White penthouse, and the whole thing there, and then right. If am I mistaken when when they break in, or they were able to open the room where he's been kidnapped and he's taken hostage, really, and held captive. They walk in, and then the first thing we see is Willard White walking out of the toilet, and we hear the toilet flush, right? So we assume that he just came out of the bathroom. I don't know about you, but the timing of the toilet flush is such that I don't think there was enough time. Was there enough time for him to wash his hands? I hope so, but because I think James Bond and he shake hands at that moment, right? And so in that sense, I hope that he did have time to shake hands, at least for James Bond's sake. But anyway, that's another toilet reference. And then the third toilet reference is where he's talking, I'll take it in the John, right, about call from government. So there's another toilet reference there. So that's interesting. Willard White and toilets. I don't know if anyone has ever written a thesis or an essay about that in film school, but that might be an interesting thing. Maybe that some kind of link between the notion of gambling and its overall broader representations in capitalist society and its relation to waste. I don't know. But anyway, um, or it could just be a little quirk of the character. Let's see. Um, I do like that moment though when Willard White is out in the sun for the first time, just standing there enjoying it. He's like, I just love that moment. That's a human moment. That and little details to what makes this film help to shine in my eyes. Just little things. That's great. And let's see. Oh, by the way, um, uh, whenever I don't do any traveling anymore now because of the world health crisis, but whenever I did, and whenever we were able, we were fortunate enough, my family and I, to go to like a resort place or a place with nice weather and a pool in the hotel. Um, if we'd pass a pool, I'd always just mumble to myself, I didn't know there was a pool down there. And I'd always say that for whatever reason. No one would get the joke around me, but still. Um, it's yeah. Uh, let's see here. Okay. All right, so it's almost 9, so it's now 8:48 where I am. So let's begin to wind down. Um, let's see. Yes, damn fool. Yes, sit. Thank you very much. That's the Octopussy reference. Yes. Um, let's see. He also talks to a snake. It's a reference to talking to the shark in Thunderball. uh, let's see. Yeah, blow up your pants. Yeah. She says it to a little kid too. It's just who says that to kids? I don't know, but anyway. Um, who's she? Your mother, right? Gosh. But the kid had a point. It was obviously rigged. The water balloons was obviously rigged. If I were the kid, I would be furious. Good. But anyway, let's see. Damien says, I always wondered if Professor Metz ever escaped the rig. Please leave, you irritating man. Yeah, it could be like that scientist, right? There's a similar kind of thing in um, Thunderball, but we'll talk about that another day. But anyway, um, yeah, Ryan says that it would have been great if Peter Hunt had returned to direct Diamonds. Yeah, one of those great what ifs, that's for sure. Let's see. Jill St. John said it would take something like 15 minutes to get to the oil rig for filming each day by helicopter. Yeah. Yeah, A Damn Fool says the Mankiewicz trilogy is completely unique. So you're again, yes, I think you and I we've spoken about this on the same page. This is Diamonds, Live and Let Die, and Man with a Golden Gun. Uh, Great stuff. Joseph is here. Hello, such a classic. Thank you very much. Yes, I agree. um, Talking about the how Sean Connery is reported or seen in interview to have reacted positively to the script. Damn Fool says that Ryan Harding referred to earlier. Sean enjoyed the new wit and comedic aspects, which gave him something new to do. Bomb's original version, while much straighter, would have been very interesting to read. Some yes, yes. Um, uh, Erwin says, if I have to call out laziness on the part of Mankiewicz, it is that in James Bond talks in German in answer and it doesn't make sense. Yes. That's right. But I'm Dutch, so there you go. No, no, these are good comments to have. Yes. Um, right. It's the same thing like Nairobi, South Africa. Um, let's see. Okay. Oh, by the way, my friends, so we're almost out of time. So I'm gonna conclude my comments very very soon here. So let's think about what film we'd like to talk about next. So if you could start putting in the chat candidates for film, the next James Bond film you would like to speak about, and we'll try to come up with a consensus for the next one. So let's. What James Bond film do you want to talk about in the next live stream? Put your ideas in the chat right now, and we'll come up with a consensus at the end. Um, Oh, Cooper Clever 1972 makes a great reference, a comparison between the Bambi and Thumper uh, scene and Blade Runner. That's very interesting. Um, Matthias is here. Hello, Ripstein. Hello, it's nice to see you. Um, yes. Uh, uh, Cooper Clever says, Daisuke, have you ever done a stream on Star Trek 2? I think that's a really good film. Sorry to go off topic here. No, it's all okay. I actually made reference to Star Trek 2 earlier about Bambi and Thumper and the Mutara Nebula. So that's perfectly in reference. That's not off topic. It's on topic very much so. So great stuff. Um, let's see. Uh, Ty says, who do you think is going to be the next James Bond? I have no idea. I would love, I don't know. I'm really bad with this sort of thing, but uh, yeah, it'll be great to see the announcement if and when it happens. Can't wait. Really can't wait. Um, Zyroth is the same for the countdown guy in Austin Power One. Really took his job seriously. Yes, Wolfgratz. So a commendation for the countdown guy, but no long service award, no Rolex watch or anything like that, no gold watch for him. But anyway, yeah, he really did. Like I love how he emphasized like it's not just 2 minutes, it's 2 minutes and counting. That's great. It's great stuff. Okay. Um, yeah. Uh, yeah. Let's see. I sorry, just Wolfgratz is clinging on. I'm assuming to my Charles Gray, Charles Dance comment and saying Charles Dance would have been an excellent Blofeld. That's an interesting concept. I'd never thought about that until you mentioned. Now that's interesting. That would have been very interesting indeed. Charles Dance and Blofeld, but maybe one day. Um, let's see. Just scrolling down here. Erwin says yeah, talk about the coda of this film in relation to Honor Majesty. Yes, yes, about the question that Tiffany's going to ask Bond. That is really uncomfortable for Honor Majesty's fans, actually, but very funny and in keeping with the spirit of the film. That's even more of a that's me even more of a suggestion that this is meant to exist in its own universe in my eyes. Although I can see both perspectives, but yeah, there's some pretty uncomfortable stuff here for Honor Majesty's fans. That's for sure. But anyway, let's see. In that's I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth here, but in that sense, Bert Saxby, he's as I say, he's the unsung hero. And if you think about it, Saxby was really, I mean, he was a pretty poor shot in terms of his aim, but he had the right idea, which is if you're gonna get rid of your opponent, you just shoot him, right? Just shoot the person, not like Winton Kidd or Blofeld who just go all these extravagant ways to try to kill people. Just shoot the person, right? And that's what he tried to do. Of course, he was thwarted at the end there, but still, he had the right idea. So I think there should be more emphasis. There should be like an award for. Award should go to Bert Saxby. Saxby deserves a lot of recognition here. I mean, he had the right idea, much more so than I would say Blofeld or um, uh, what's his name? Went and killed. Although it's very interesting, how did what how did Saxby know to kill what's his name, to kill White, when it was Bond impersonating Saxby talking to Blofeld, and Blofeld said, "It's, we you take care of Willard White." So how did Saxby know to do it himself? Which doesn't make sense. Although if you think about it, maybe after that conversation between Bond and Blofeld, maybe Blofeld contacted Saxby again, and maybe Saxby got the hint or something, or maybe there was some kind of signal. But anyway, that's so maybe that's a further suggestion that Saxby was really much more in the know than we might have realized. Maybe he had so much information that he knew about this before anything happened. So maybe he was on he knew about Bond and what his ruse was before Blofeld. So in that sense, he knew more than Blofeld did, Saxby. So that makes Saxby, I think, even much more of an intriguing villain. Um, oh well. So anyway, Saxby. Saxby. So anyway, my friends, so let's start winding down this conversation about this great film. So I should say, finally, I haven't spoken about everything that I wanted to say here, but the the conversation, I think, covered it really nicely. So well done to all of you. Thank you so much for your wonderful contributions, as always. It's been such a pleasure to read the live chat and to be involved. So thank you so much for that and your support, and also just having a good time with this film. And again, for those of you who have expressed maybe disappointment with this film or not liking it, so that's, as I say, completely okay. I get it. As I said at the beginning, I was there many years back, so I understand where you're coming from. So um, but there are, I think, other possibilities with this film and looking at this film. And I don't know, I don't I not taking it seriously, I don't quite mean it that way, but looking at it from the vantage point of a fun, campy entertainment, which relies on clever dialogue and which relies on setup and elaborate, perhaps over elaborate release, but still that being the source of the entertainment, I think, is part of the charm of the film. And there are undeniable James Bond moments. Is it the most ideal film for a lot of people? Maybe not. But still, there are so many positive traits. I think it is a splendid time at the movies, and I'm so glad it's here. And I think there are, as I was trying to make the case for in this live stream, there are so many wonderful moments, brilliant moments, musical motifs, character places where the characters shine, humanity, and it's a Sean Connery James Bond film. Is it his best film? I'll leave it up to you to decide. But regardless, it is a Sean Connery vehicle, and he is back. He is back, and he is Sean Connery. So and he delivers a film that is, I think, undeniable in its importance and effect in terms of James Bond, at least in the films that are to come immediately after this. So, I'm a fan. And if you are a fan too, great. If not, that's also fine. There will be other James Bond films that we will talk about in the future. But for now, this is Diamonds Are Forever. And with that, my friends, let's end the conversation. I will now go to the chat and see, together with any concluding comments that you might have. Uh, let's see. If you want to talk about, okay, here we go. Now, what's the next film we should talk about? Which is Cyberarthur suggests From Russia with Love. Okay, Die Another Day, says John. I think that would be great. Die Another Day. Um, let's see. Um, I'm not very good with my impressions, but here's my. This is. Do you know what this is? That's my impersonation of one of the dancers in the Die Another Day uh, title credit sequence. I can't do it very well, but let's see. So Cyrus is, or Man with a Golden Gun. Um, Timothy says Goldeneye, although we did Goldeneye already. So I really should have a list. I'm sorry, I'm so poorly organized. I'll try to create a list of things that we've done and we haven't done. So don't worry about that, Timothy. But let's see. Um, Man with a Golden Gun is mentioned. Let's see. Um, Erwin says, I'm trying to postpone Quantum of Solace in the remaining Brosnan films. Zara says, I love Tomorrow Never Dies. I do. You know, there's an interesting connection. Diamonds Are Forever has a great chase in a car park, right, in Vegas. And that has an interest because there's also a car park chase scene in Tomorrow Never Dies too. So there's an interesting parallel between this film, Diamonds, and Tomorrow Never Dies. But anyway, uh, let's see. Damien says Living Daylights. Yeah, we already did Daylights, but thank you. I love that film, by the way, though. It's great stuff. All right, so okay. Cooper Glover says Man with a Golden Gun. Um, let's see. Rod says, "Oh, thank you very much, Rod. You're very kind. Thank you." Um, Erwin says, "I would be perfectly happy with From Russia with Love or The Man with the Golden Gun." Damien suggests Octopussy. So let me try to give you my best Louis Jordan impression. Octopus, octopus. So I can't. Okay, that's it. That's I love Octopussy, by the way. That's a great film. Uh, the West is decadent and divided, right? Um, let's see. Um, or Hannock says Tomorrow Never Dies. Erwin says, or on the other hand, it has been a while since we discussed any of the Brosnan films, or Quantum of Solace is a correct choice. Yes. Wolfgrat says Die Another Day or Octopussy, or Fine by Me. Um, let's see here. Matthew says, "Never say never again." Yeah, that we haven't done that yet, so that's a possibility. Um, Kevin suggests "World is Not Enough." Yes, yeah, "World is Not." There's a lot of great stuff to talk about that film as well. Yeah, um, that's also a film with a tunnel, right? Anyway, so I wrote this as I want to give a Man with a Golden Gun another try. I really didn't like it. First time around, Damn Fool says Golden Gun probably to finish off the three because we have done Live and Let Die. Um, and again, Danny Hamlin, Jonah V says A View to a Kill. Interesting. So, gosh, okay, and then I think that's the end of the chat right now. So, where should we go here, my friends? I am game for anything. Excuse me. All right, so I'm game for anything. So, uh, Golden Gun is fine with me. I can do Octopussy. I can do View to a Kill. We can do a Brosnan film if you want. We haven't spoken about Brosnan in a while, so that's a possibility. Um, if we're going to do Craig, I'd like to. I guess I should have done this in order, but I don't know. I just like the idea also choosing as we go along as well. There's a nice sense of spontaneity, which really helps me with being inspired to do the live streams. And so, but with the Craig films, I think there is a real sense of continuity, which means that since we've talked about Casino Royale, the next, if we're going to do a Craig film, I think we should do Quantum of Solace if we're going to do a Craig film. But for everything else, I think we can go somewhat out of the chronology. It's up to you, my friends. Um, is it Man with a Golden Gun? David Jones says, From Rush with Love, Goldfinger, The Spy Who Loved Me, my favorites. Um, yeah, so if anyone, um, Wolfgrat says, I think we should try to do the Craigs in the block. Yeah, that's a good idea. I should have saved the conversation of. I guess I should have saved the conversation for Casino Royale then, but But well. We'll do the Quantum of Solace, and in any event, I do want to go in order. However, we tackle them. So Thunderball possibly, says Kevin. Wolfgang's Golden Gun is fine. So yeah, let's do Golden Gun. Sounds cool. Um, Okay, I'll leave it to Kubrick Lover 1972. You and Damn Fool, you are always great moderators. So thank you so much. So, yeah, can you give me a sense of what the consensus is, my friends? It looks like Man with a Golden Gun, but if I'm mistaken, just let me know. Just if you can give me the consensus. Is it Golden Gun? All right, great. Thank you, Cooper Glover, my dear friend. So, Golden Gun. So, there we go. Golden Gun it is. So, Man with the Golden Gun. So, we will do the Man with the Golden Gun next. And so that means that I don't know when it will be, but maybe 2 weeks from now. But let's start with the Golden Gun, which I think is very underrated. Um, and it. There's an interesting thing. I think even the filmmakers and the producers consider it to be a weaker Bond film, and you can tell this because there's a subtle thing that happens. I don't know, the Patrick McNee narrated making of documentaries, which are really great. And part of they first came out with these MGM DVDs from the early 2000s. And I think they've carried over into the Blu-rays and stuff. But if you notice, the Patrick McNee narrated documentaries always say, oh, this is a great Bond film or something. But with Golden Gun, at the end, he says, he describes Man with the Golden Gun. Man with the Golden Gun remains a film that has all the right ingredients, which is, I think, a subtle way to say that, oh yeah, even the filmmakers think it's not a good film. So but it's great. It is really great. There's so many great things about this film, Man with the Golden Gun. And talk about musical moments. It has one of my favorite John Barry musical moments in Walking, the Christopher Lee walk as he's walking onto his boat, and the music. That's one of my favorite musical moments in a Bond film ever. The oh, this is great stuff. And Roger Moore's performance is really hard edged, very hard edge. I know we'll talk about it, but I know Roger Moore perhaps expressed a little bit of discomfort, perhaps in terms of how vicious he was in a lot of these scenes in the film. But still, there is there is a I think there is a way that in an interesting way it works for the character. Whether it's morally acceptable or not, that's a completely different question entirely. But if it works for the character, I think there's something about it that seems to be a part of that universe. It is still very jarring and very shocking, which I think adds to the effect. But we'll talk about that when we talk about Golden Gun, and also there's some weird things about it that uh, uh, there's some interesting, almost meta discussions about depictions of Asians in films, and I actually, it's actually much more complex than meets the eye, I would suggest, and I think Roger Moore's Bond is a bit of an a-hole in a lot of cases here, but again, that's part of the effect of the character, and he needs to be in certain ways, but. That there's a really interesting discussion I think there about this kind of depiction, and I'll try to talk about how I feel about this and other aspects going forward. But uh, and what else? What else about Golden Gun? I think it has a great song. Lulu, right? I love how Lulu, the song, the lyric it's really it's quite weird in this great way. I love how Lulu says, one what's the phrase in the song? One golden shot means another poor. The phrase is one golden shot means another poor victim has come to a glittering end. Right? I love how she says victim in the song. She's a golden shot. It's a golden shot, right? Another golden shot means another poor victim. I love she says victim. So there's another victim. I love that. That's great stuff. Anyway, so um, we will talk about the film Golden Gun, Man with a Golden Gun, next time. Seth Walsh is here, so hello, my friend. Um, It's nice to see you, and I hope you're enjoying your day. Um, yeah. Uh, Yeah. Oh, yeah. Erwin's talking about the stunt. I'll talk about that. And actually, I support that stunt very much. I do understand the whole thing with the sound effect there, but which is actually which I think which makes the documentary even more valuable because you can actually see that stunt, not with the sound effect, but with some interesting music overlaid, which makes it really powerful. But anyway, my friends, that's it. So. Thank you so much for your time. And we will talk about Golden Gun, The Man with the Golden Gun, and which is a film which has a film about the man with the golden gun and all of his victims. So, thank you very much for your time today, my friends. Please enjoy the rest of your day, your weekend, your evening, whatever the case may be, and we will be in touch soon. So, how shall we end this live stream on Diamonds Are Forever? So, let's see, how shall we end? Um, okay, yeah, we were talking about it in the live chat earlier. So let's end it the way that Shirley Bassey ends the song "Diamonds Are Forever." So as we know, the song is the ends. Diamonds are forever, forever, forever. Right. So she does say a lot of things forever. So let's all sing if you want. If you don't want to, that's okay. But let's all sing to the camera or to the screen, the end, or to say the lyric to the last bit of "Diamonds Are Forever," the song, and that will end our live stream. So anyway, thank you very much. And until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well and keep on watching a lot of great, great movies. So thank you very much, my friends, and stay strong and stay safe during these times, the most important thing. And with that, here we go. So diamonds are forever, forever, forever. Diamonds are forever, 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 and ever, and ever. Da 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 da. Thank you very much, my friends, and peace. Okay. Thank you. All right, my friends, that was great. Thank you so much, as always. You guys, everyone is fantastic. You do so much, much more than I. So, but I have to go now watch The Man with a Golden Gun. 'Cause I'm inspired to watch that film. So thank you so much for that. So, take care, my friends, and we'll see you again very soon. So thank you. Diamonds are forever, and ever and ever. Diamonds are forever and ever and ever.